Welcome back, everyone, once again to a brand new installment of Screenplay Rewind. I'm Geoff.
And I'm Ron.
And Ron yawned at least 15 times in the green room today. Like and subscribe on Yonsens TV.
Yonsens. Oh, man.
Oh, my goodness. How's it going, dude?
It's going pretty good. Going pretty good. A little tired.
I felt like your brain was short-circuiting as you tried to fire up that sentence. So I was like, we're going to have a great show tonight, everybody.
Yeah, you know the little beach ball cursor thing on a Mac when it's sitting there thinking? That's my brain today. That's
your brain. Yeah, I've also just been the last few days, I just felt kind of out of it. I have been doing pretty much nothing in my free time but watching Lobos Jr. play the Elden Ring DLC.
I just started it.
I could not be bothered to fucking play that DLC even though I beat the main game. So I was like, you know what? I could play this game and get frustrated all over again and just get mad, or I can have fun and watch Lobos play it, because Lobos doesn't get frustrated because he is the god of patience.
Yeah.
Which I am not. I'm so aggro about that fucking game that if I got stuck on one boss, you know what? Fuck this, uninstall and just walk away.
If anyone wants to know just how patient that man is, watch his no bonfire run. Have you ever seen that? Do you know what happens in that?
I think we talked about it a long time ago, but I don't think I ever watched it myself.
He does all of the original Dark Souls without using a bonfire a single time. Gets all the way to Lord Gwyn, and then just out of habit while talking to chat accidentally rests at the what's the big thing you put down that lets you teleport?
Lord Vessel.
Yeah, the Lord Vessel. You can rest at it like a bonfire. So he just absent-mindedly rests at it while talking to chat and stares at his screen for a moment and just goes, well, and then he exits out and deletes the save and starts over.
Technically, it's not a bonfire.
Technically, it's not a bonfire.
So I would have continued, called it a mulligan.
He did the entire game without a bonfire and then accidentally rested at the Lord Vessel.
And
just before fighting Gwen.
You would see me on the Twitch stream, stand up, pick up my computer monitor, and just fucking bane that shit over my knee and then walk out of the room.
And he can parry out Gwen. I can parry out Gwen. So
we did it at first. There's YouTube evidence of that.
Yeah.
As we learned in real time over the course of
parry
several hours. But that is ancient lore for this podcast now.
Good.
So today we are going to be covering The Martian, but before that, we're going to be talking about our comments and questions. So would you like to lead us off with some of our questions and comments, Ron?
My question is, I thought about this, so I already have an answer to my own question if you need a moment to think about it. What is the most Murica thing you have personally encountered? Not something you've seen on the internet, but something you have personally encountered in the wild.
You're going to have to go first because it's going to take me a second.
For me, have you ever seen that little air pistol that you load salt into for killing flies? So you can literally just shoot the fly. It started out as a novelty thing, but now you can literally just go into Walmart and buy one. Yeah, that's got to be that, because I can't imagine anything more American than just hearing a fly buzzing around, picking up a gun, loading it, and just to take care of it.
So I'm going to go in a different direction with this. I think the most Murica thing I've ever seen was one day I was walking through a grocery store. I forget, it might have been Target. I'm walking through the grocery store and I see in a fucking freezer frozen deep fried ding dongs. And I felt my cholesterol get worse in real time just staring at this package. But yeah, it was frozen dessert treat deep fried ding dongs.
Oh my god.
And I'm just is this someone took the time to design this shit, put it on a store. People are fucking buying that shit. And it's just how far gone do you have to be to I'm gonna buy this fucking frozen deep fried ding dong out of the Target freezer or research, wherever the fuck I was. But isn't that just depressing to think that that exists in like a grocery store?
Yeah, that makes me pretty sad.
It's pretty. Maybe it was Twinkies. It was something.
Twinkies makes more sense, but yeah.
But either way, it's pretty fucking sad. It's like, if that shit is like on sale at the fair, like whatever. People intentionally buy the worst shit in the universe to eat when they're at the fair because that's just like part of the thing.
Right.
But when you're buying it from the grocery store, that's where I draw the line. Like, no, we gotta have some standards, please.
You're supposed to go to the fair and eat just delicious yet terrible food, But that's part of the experience. If you're for whatever reason going to a fair.
Yeah, if you're going to the fair, you're gonna eat the deep fried Twinkie and gain at least 5 pounds just in real time as you devour the deep fried Twinkie.
Are we to the point yet that they're just deep frying butter and handing it to you?
Probably. You're potentially gonna die on a ride. That's part of the gamble. That's pretty fun. Yeah, but deep fried Twinkie / ding dong / whatever the fuck it was being at the grocery store made me really sad for the state of humanity. I'm not gonna lie.
It's pretty dystopian, and I can't explain how. That's how it makes me feel.
Soylent Green is deep fried Twinkies, Ron. That's the only explanation.
Twinkies. It's made of deep fried Twinkies.
You maniacs.
Oh man.
What's our next question / comment we got? By the way, I'm assuming that was in relation to it just about to be July 4th. Is that what got you like America on your brain?
No, actually, but that is a good point. I killed a fly with a kitchen towel.
You made sure it wasn't Goldblum first, right?
No, I forgot
to check. We got to do the Goldblum check.
I forgot to check for the whitehead, but I didn't hear any help me's. So, no, I killed a fly with a kitchen towel, and then I was talking to Chris about how at this point, like, I'm about ready to just go buy that goddamn gun from Walmart. And then I started talking about how that's probably the most America thing I've ever encountered in real life. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna ask Geoff. So yeah. Anyways, nice. Speaking of my wife, she had a question for my wife. She had a question. What is your favorite movie trailer? Geoff, go.
I love this question. My first instinct was to think of like 75 different trailers, so it's almost impossible to say like my exact favorite one, but what I think is my all-time favorite trailer, it was not one that it was not the Cliff Notes of the movie. It was not one that was actually like during my lifetime, but it was after having gone back to watch it. I think it is just a work of genius. But the first teaser trailer for Alien, I think, is the best trailer.
I don't think I've ever seen any of the trailers for Alien.
I will show it to you. I will send you the link tonight. It is fucking incredible, dude. It is like every single thing you and I are ever talking about, like what we want from a trailer, it's in that fucking Alien trailer. It's genius. It has no dialogue. You never see the xenomorph, and you don't even really know what the plot is. It's just like out of context, like imagery, and the music's really good, and it's fantastic. You can't tell from the trailer, like, that Ripley's the main character, because that was a misdirect back then. It is just like a fucking work of art.
Interesting.
It's super, super good. And probably my favorite one that I was actually like present for to actually see like at a theater, I think over the last few years, I loved the marketing for the first Cloverfield movie. If you remember that, where like you didn't even know the name of the movie. You didn't know what the fuck was happening. It was all just like very vague and very it hooked me because it was like just very
Untitled J.J. Abrams project, or was that Star Trek?
That was Star Trek, I think. With Cloverfield, the working title for the first few months of like the marketing for it was the date that it came out, because they didn't have the name associated with it yet. It was really interesting. So what's yours?
So I'm torn between two, but my immediate answer is actually a band trailer. There was a trailer for the original Raimi, Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movie that you can now only see on YouTube. But I saw the teaser in theaters, and then when it was actually the first anything I saw for the movie, and then when 9/11 happened, they had to pull it.
Yeah, because he had the reflections of the two towers in his eyes,
More
right?
than that,
Or that was the poster. I remember they had a poster they had to pull too,
yeah,
because
I'm
one
sure
of the
that
first
poster's worth
posters.
some money now.
Yeah, they had the reflection of the twin towers in one of his eyes on the poster, and it got pulled immediately.
I think you see it in his eyes at the end of the trailer.
Mm.
But the trailer just starts out, you don't know what it is. It's just a bank robbery. And then the guys go up to the roof and a helicopter comes and picks them up. And then the helicopter is just speeding away through New York, weaving in and out of buildings and stuff. And then the helicopter just stops in dead air and the guy's got it full throttle and it won't move. And then the camera follows to the back of the helicopter and the tail rotor is not spinning. There is a web stuck on the tail. And then the helicopter starts getting pulled backwards while the guy has it full throttle forwards. And then you see the helicopter just stop in midair and float there, and the guys are freaking out. And as the camera slowly pulls out, you see it stuck in a giant spider web between the two towers. And the rotor of the helicopter is twitching as if it's trying to pull its way out of the web.
Yeah.
And then it cuts to Spider-Man like swinging through the city or whatever. And that's it. And it is basically just a suit reveal and a teaser for the movie. There's no dialogue. They don't mention Tobey Maguire's name, nothing. It was very early on in production.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, I remember that.
You can't find it anywhere now. You can find it on YouTube, but at the time, it was just gone. There was no watching.
Yeah,
it was just this mythical thing that people talked about, like the Loch Ness Monster, until
the only way back then you would have been able to watch it was to like download it from like Kazaa or one of those like horrible websites of all.
Friend.
Well, yeah, and LimeWire, like all those like horrible file sharing.
But
fucking.
I can't download it from those sites because they're just eating up all my bandwidth on porn, Geoff.
I only have so many megabytes on this floppy disk, dude.
Yeah, so it was either between that or the teaser trailer for the first Transformers movie before I knew any better.
Before you knew any better.
Before I knew any better.
You want to know what gets an honorable mention? One movie that I thought had a fucking fantastic trailer. Like the music's great, the scene choice for it is great. Watchmen had a wonderful first trailer.
Is so good.
It's fucking incredible. It's like it's focused on the Dr. Manhattan scene, like when he gets vaporized, and the music's great. I think they have like a Smashing Pumpkins song that just like matches it beautifully, and it is one of the best trailers I've ever seen because I was so stoked to watch that movie, mostly just because of how good that fucking trailer was.
The Transformers trailer was, they end up using it in the movie, the footage. It's on a laptop that they show John Voight. But it's talking about in whatever year we sent a probe to Mars and we were told that the lander crashed. And then it cuts to footage of like pictures of Mars and like the rover, like the lander letting the rover out and it actually roving and it not crashed, it functioning. But then you see dust start getting kicked up in like the same tempo as like footsteps. And then you just see this big silhouetted machine walk into frame, look down and reach down and pick it up and the image goes black. And the government told us that the probe crashed, but that was when we learned of the existence of extraterrestrials, which it was, I don't remember how silhouetted he is in the movie or in the trailer. In the prequel book, that is Starscream.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I think, I just watched it with the kids recently. I want to say he's heavily silhouetted because the sun is like behind him, but I want to say the head is the correct shape for Starscream in the movie. But it's when they were going through the solar system one planet at a time.
You know another one that was really strong that like I try to think back to those types of trailers that were like monumental as far as rapidly changing the perception of the movie. Do you remember the first trailer for Iron Man? The first trailer for Iron Man like made everyone go like, "Wait."
It only
Iron
shows
Man looks
the
at me.
Mark 1 except for the very end after it shows the title. Then it cuts to him flying next to the F-22s.
Well, the trailer I'm thinking of is the one where they show him. He sends the like mini shoulder rocket things after like a tank.
Oh yeah, that's
and
the
it's
second
him,
trailer, I think.
Yeah, and it's him walking away from the tank as it's exploding, and I think they had like the fucking AC/DC music going for it or something, and it was like such a badass trailer, and everyone was like, Iron Man went from why the fuck are they making an Iron Man movie to one of the most hype movies of the year, and like set in motion that entire fucking industry.
Doesn't that trailer do the same thing they do in the movie, which is when he gets shot by the tank, the music stops and then he stands up and
I
you
think
just hear the
so.
tink?
I need to watch that again. I really liked that trailer.
That's pretty good. The reason I know that's the second trailer, I wasn't trying to correct you or anything, but the reason I know that's,
no, you're fine.
The reason I know that's the second trailer is the GM of our movie theater. He was the only one that thought the movie looked like dog shit.
What?
Well, he didn't like the design of the suit, and we're like, dude, that's the Mark 1.
It's iron. It's dude.
The trailer, the first trailer only shows the Mark 1 and the cave escape.
Yeah.
And well, dude, that's just the Mark 1. Like the one
He's
that
gonna
you
get
know
the fucking suit
is the Mark 2 and beyond. Like they got to start somewhere. And he was like, I fucking hope that's the Mark 1 because it looks like shit.
My brain went to is Jeff Bridges when he's like, Tony Stark built this in a cave with a pile of scrap or whatever he
What
says.
always comes to my mind is Lebowski sitting there starring the White Russian, just staring. I fucking love that gif.
The Mark 1 really ties the room together. Oh man. But yeah, I love this question because as you and I have often Boomer complained about is how trailers
list of 100.
No, like our Boomer complaint about it is how nowadays most trailers are just hot fucking garbage because most of the time the people making them are just cliff noting the entirety of the movie, revealing like third act twists, showing you all the best pieces of the movie. There's no like artistry behind it at all. And it's really depressing.
You know, I'm trying to remember. I'll have to watch the trailer tonight, but I want to say the first Pirates of the Caribbean trailer was good.
I can see that. I can't remember it, but I remember being like intrigued by it.
I know it had the "You better start believing in ghost stories," and then the moment you see that part, you're just like, "What the fuck is happening in this Disney movie? Why is people's skin peeling off their bodies?" Yeah, I want to say that trailer. I think it shows them walking underwater also, but it just shows you. It just shows you enough. I want to say it's like one of the last good trailers we got.
We get them every now and then. The one for Nosferatu was great.
No, I haven't watched it yet.
Oh my god,
I don't know if I'm going to until after the movie.
You can totally watch it because it doesn't show you jack shit. It's pure
I can
like
watch it. I'm just not gonna.
No, I'm saying like you don't see like Nosferatu. You don't see jack shit. You don't know what anyone's like like rolling the story at all. Yeah, it's really well done. It's exactly what I want in kind of like echoes of that Alien trailer I was talking about, where I want you to have a teaser trailer. I don't want you to just fucking run down a summary of all the best scenes from the movie. Like one of the trailers that have pissed me off the most actually was the Dark Knight one. You remember the Dark Knight one where they showed the semi truck get flipped over? That would have been an incredible moment if you hadn't seen it 1,000 times in the trailers for no reason. You don't have to show anything in the fucking Batman trailer, dude. It's gonna sell 1 billion tickets because it's Batman. Why are you showing one of the best bits of action in the entire movie?
Batman versus Superman shows Doomsday.
Yep. That was like the third act twist for that movie, and they showed it in the fucking trailer. It was like, what the fuck are y'all doing, dude?
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
It's fucking dumb.
I'm watching the Fury Road trailer right now because I want to say it was pretty good. I've got it playing.
Furiosa had good trailers as well.
Not favorite, but just in the conversation of good trailer, good
Yeah.
go watch. I guess I don't know. Yeah, this one's pretty good. It's showing a lot of action without showing any action.
Right.
It seems like
Yeah,
it's pretty well made. I think George Miller like is in the. I don't think he's cutting them. I think he's in the cutting room though. If I recall,
can see that.
He's got so much control over this.
He's so hands-on with all
Yeah.
things Mad Max when those movies come out, man. Like I guarantee you they have to get his sign off.
It just showed them driving to the storm and what a day, what a glorious day.
I love those movies so much.
Yeah, I'll have to watch this trailer with sound on when we're done because this trailer looks like it was probably really good. I remember seeing it in theaters being like, oh my God. But I don't remember. Too long ago.
Yeah, my memory is so fucked.
Yeah.
It's gone. What's our next question?
Next question. Who do you think has had the biggest fall from grace in Hollywood?
So what I find interesting about this
is the Hollywood and not movie?
Or
not actor?
Like, yeah, like if you're thinking of actors or if you're thinking of like creatives kind of
I had
around
an
Hollywood.
immediate answer pop into my head and I read this.
Was Kevin Spacey your immediate answer?
No, Harvey Weinstein.
That too. Kevin Spacey was the first one I thought of because that impacted me the most because of how much I loved Kevin Spacey and how much I loved seeing him in movies.
Yeah,
like
he's
Weinstein's Weinstein's thing was like
responsible for so many movies and so much rape.
He is such a fucking piece of shit, but the reason that didn't come to mind is because he's like a producer behind the scenes.
Well, that's why I said the key word there for me was Hollywood. Like I know he's probably talking actor.
Yeah.
But I mean the amount of influence and power Weinstein had in Hollywood.
You want to know
and the Weinstein company did so much.
Yeah, you don't have like independent film in the 90s without the Weinstein
Kevin
company.
Smith talked a lot about Weinstein when he fell because he did a lot of work with Kevin Smith.
Quentin Tarantino mostly has a career because of Weinstein. So that's like a domino that, was a result of that. You want to know the person that also this made me think of? J.K. Rowling. All J.K. Rowling had to do was just shut the fuck up and not go on Twitter being a transphobic piece of shit.
Thanksgiving and leave it at that.
All she had to do was not have a Twitter account, and she would have gone down as one of the most beloved authors of the last 100 years. Created one of the biggest IPs of all time. But because she continued to be an asshole and opening her mouth constantly about shit that she should not have been talking about in the first place, she has now done irreparable harm to her entire legacy as a creator. Because, you have like, I think you told me like, isn't it like Radcliffe, who has publicly said he will not work on Harry Potter at all anymore because of its associations with J.K. Rowling. You have people,
at least to the mortgage do, I'm sure.
Right. They are actively, like just constantly losing sales on merchandise because people that are in the fan base don't want to wear Harry Potter shirts or buy, collectibles or anything because it supports J.K. Rowling. That video game that came out,
they tanked an entire video game.
They tanked an entire video game, which is kind of sad because the people making that game had nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
But because it's Harry Potter, people are boycotting it because J.K. Rowling is just a fucking monster. And it's just one of those things where it's like,
I wonder why.
Granted, it doesn't affect her because she made her billions already.
Yeah.
She has literally more money than the queen. It doesn't affect her at all. But I wonder if she thinks back on this whole thing and is regretful about it at all. But I also get the impression because she is such a dick about everything, she just doesn't care. And she will continue for all time opening her mouth and being a piece of shit just because she can.
Yeah. I think it's pretty obvious she doesn't care. And she, like you said, she's already gotten paid, so she's just going to continue being her, unfortunately.
Doesn't affect her. Man, Warner Brothers.
They have to be
fucking
pissed, right? They can't catch a break.
Yeah,
I mean, they had it with Batman versus Superman. They had it with Harry Potter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder why. So when Adele was getting drunk and going on Twitter, whoever her handlers are took her Twitter away, and she did press releases through other people via Twitter because she kept getting drunk and just going on Twitter rants. I don't know why no one ever did that with J.K. Rowling.
She probably doesn't have a publicist because nobody wants to fucking be around her.
Man, that's probably true.
Like she just comes across like such a conniving asshole to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you have so much negative impact that you ruin like the entire reputation of what made you famous in the first place, that's pretty crazy to me. Like to reach that level of assholery is almost impressive.
It's interesting how, like, contrast her. I understand that there is an enormous size difference here. There's a huge scale difference here. But contrast her with like Scott Cawthorn, right? He had already made his money off of everything Five Nights was doing, but he's like hardcore right-wing Christian or whatever, and people didn't want him involved with stuff anymore. And he was still getting a check because he's creator or whatever from stuff, but he stepped back. And there's other people making the games now and other people writing the books now and everything. He stepped back from it when that's what the audience wanted. And you know, he's still being him. But
yeah, doesn't he like actively donate to like MAGA institutions and shit?
So yeah.
Yeah, I don't know the details because I've never really. I like Five Nights at Freddy's casually, but not to the point to where I would ever like be bothered to look up what Cawthon is doing.
Yeah, he has some stances that he takes about the LGBTQI plus cosine tangent community.
It's unfortunate when you see these people that are involved in making stuff that you like and they end up being a piece of shit. It's just like, man, why'd you have to go and ruin it for everybody, you know?
Everyone.
Yeah.
Even, you know, if you don't like gay people, I mean, just keep that shit at home, man. I mean, go get better. You know, people are people. Realize that.
At least try to fucking get better.
But
like,
I mean, at the same time, like, I guess even if your opinions are wrong, you're entitled to them. But like, I'm not gay, and I don't want to engage with this shit anymore because I know who you are now, and I wish I didn't because I can't separate creators from their work.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate when they just destroy an entire thing for everybody. Like people can never look at Harry Potter the same way because of J.K. Rowling.
It's always going to have a shadow hanging over it.
People can't look at Mel Gibson in a movie without thinking of.
Okay, but at least Mel Gibson was funny. Like,
he's a fucking monster.
He's a fucking monster.
Yeah.
But just listening to his nonsensical tirade, I don't know. For some reason, I don't like him, and I have a hard time watching anything he does now. Like, it ruined it for me. But, like, for some reason, when that was breaking in the news, I just laughed out loud anytime I read an article about it. I guess because it's Mel Gibson and he was already kind of past his prime at that point when this happened.
Right.
But I don't know. It's just like the guy that made The Passion of the Christ is evidently huge anti-Jew guy. Like,
interesting how that works out.
Yeah, funny how the guy that makes that movie is anti-Semitic.
I mean, maybe the worst aspect of this was when you try to go back and watch Home Alone 2, and it's just absolutely shit canned. This wonderful, wonderful piece of fiction is shit canned by the appearance of none other than Donald fucking Trump.
Who was it that said Home Alone 2 star Donald Trump indicted on 34?
Yeah, I think it was one of the main like discussing film or one of those like main movie news Twitter accounts. I forget which one.
One of those accounts that refuses to put president in front of his name did it.
It was really good. The placeholder image for the tweet was like him with Kevin McAllister in the scene from that Home Alone 2. And it was fucking genius.
Oh, it was so good.
And I think we had one other comment.
Well, I got cut from the team evidently. That was
So do you not know the context for this? Because I
Not
can
at
tell you what
all.
he's referring to. Oh, okay. We're gonna do 6 degrees of fucking
But
Kevin Bacon.
my
to
call sign
work this
is
back.
wash at, it turns out.
So what he's referring to is this was in the comments for Hot Shots, and in Hot Shots they have the gymnastic scene, and we talked about how it was very reminiscent of the gymnastically murdered velociraptors
Right.
in the Lost World. And Jeff Goldblum says they cut you from the team. That's what this is referring to.
How the fuck? How many tacks and how much yarn did it take you?
To figure that out.
Yeah, here I'm replying to it right now. There we go. I just said, "Oh, I get it." Oh, wow. I don't even know what to say to that anymore.
I know, right? That's why I said I had to go through like fucking 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon to work its way back into context, dude. Oh man. So Ron, you want to talk about The Martian?
I do.
Let's talk about the fucking Martian. First of all, if you have any questions or comments that you would like right on the beginning of the show on the next one, you can always email us screenplayrewind@gmail.com, drop a comment on the YouTube uploads, or hit us up on Twitter at SPR Filmcast, and you can send us a message on there, reply to one of the uploads, and we will read it on the next show. We welcome all of the comments and questions. Thanks everyone again for writing in. Welcome again, any new people joining us. The new subscribers on YouTube continue to trickle in because the fucking Kung Fu Hustle upload is up to like 13,000 views, which is way more than any of our uploads deserve. So thanks for that. Man. Yeah, let's talk about the fucking Martian. Spoilers for both the novel and the book. And this is not only our standard podcast review of the movie, but this is also kind of like a book report, because I think you and I both listened to the movie, or the adaptation.
I listened to the movie and the book.
Yeah, I listened to the Audible adaptation, which I think is a little bit different from the original novel. Actually, it's kind of crazy how many different fucking versions of the Martian there are.
I read the novel
like the side of books
once. I think I still have it. I think it's still behind me. Yes, I see it. I'm looking at it right now. But you said there was an epilogue in the audiobook that's not in the book, and I don't remember enough about actually reading the book to confirm that it's different.
So what was different about this, and it's actually crazy because I was doing some research on Reddit about this as far as how many different fucking versions there are of this book. Okay, so the first like stepping stone to this whole thing with the book is it wasn't initially released as your prototypical novel.
Yeah.
It was released in like chapters individually online until like eventually Andy Weir got the traction on it to get it published as a full-blown novel.
Did you watch that interview I sent you?
I did not. So you'll have to give us tidbits from that.
So he tells the story in the interview he did with Adam Savage. Just go on YouTube, type in Adam Savage, Andy Weir interview. There's two that will come up. They're both good. One is Adam Savage and Andy Weir. One is Adam Savage, Andy Weir, and Chris Hadfield, who's an actual real-life astronaut. And he tells the story in that one, but in the Chris Hadfield one, when they ask him about it, because that one's in front of a live audience, he said that he tried desperately to give away this book for free, and no one would let him. Which is pretty much the truth.
Isn't that nuts? Like, he's just pretty much handing it over for free. It eventually becomes a published novel. And like a year and a half later, Ridley Scott is directing your movie adaptation with half of Hollywood.
He closed the movie deal while closing the book deal at the same time.
That's crazy.
It was a serial. He wrote it chapter by chapter and just posted it chapter by chapter, so it was serialized on his website. And people are like, hey, this is great. I love this. But can you put out an e-reader version so I can download it and put it in my e-reader? I hate reading it on the website, which he says in the interview with Adam Savage and Chris Hadfield. That's fair because his website was just as plain as it could be. Just white page, black text, left aligned, and blue links. And that's it. No images, no nothing. So he was like, that's fair. No one should have to read this on my website. So he made the two main e-reader versions are, the .epub and the .whatever. And then he's like, there you go. You can just download them, put them in an e-reader, fine. And people wrote in and were like, hey, I really like this book, but I don't like reading it on the website. And I'm not tech savvy enough to figure out how to download this and put it on my e-reader. Can you just put it on Kindle so I can just download it directly to my e-reader? And he was like, okay, fine, whatever. So he goes over to Amazon, and since they make their money off of content and they actually lose money on every Kindle they sell because they want you to buy the books and the reading service, you cannot put anything up for free on Kindle. So the lowest royalty he could take was 30%. So he said 30%. And the lowest price he could put was 99 cents. So he puts 99 cents. And he's like, great. I get 30 pennies every time someone downloads this. So he's like, now you can read it on my website for free. You can download it yourself for free. Or you can just pay $1 service charge to have your Kindle automatically download it for you. Good. Fine. Goodbye. And he goes off to start working on his next project. And then he starts getting these emails like, congratulations, you're in the top whatever category. Congratulations, you're in the top like 100 or whatever. And he's looking at these numbers of things, of downloads, and he's like, I have no context for these numbers. I don't know if these numbers are good or bad. They seem to be good. They're congratulating me on them. And then he starts getting phone calls from, was it Random House that published it?
I think so.
And they wanted to do a book deal. And then the go-between on that was like, do you need an agent? And he's like, yeah, I'm starting to think I need an agent. So that guy became his agent. And then he in the same, I think he said it's in the same week, he closes the book deal and the movie deal.
Wild.
And he was desperately just trying to write as a hobby. Well, not necessarily as a hobby. He got laid off, but he was in a position where when AOL laid him off, their stock prices had also never been higher. So he sold the stock that he got for working at the company. And he was like, okay, I want to write, so I'm just going to try to become a writer. So he was in a financial position to where he didn't have to be like starving artist or anything. He could just write. And I think he said this is his third book, The Martian is. It's either his second or his third.
But for your first novel that gets traction to be directed by Ridley Scott and star Matt Damon, Jessica Chastain, Sebastian Stan, half of the MCU is in this fucking movie. Sean Bean, Jeff Daniels, like the cast is, the cast is fucking incredible in this. And
Donald Glover,
dude, Drew Goddard adapting your book and directed by Ridley Scott, like
fuck, man,
fucking nuts, just absolutely insane. Also, if we haven't already said, I forget if I did, but spoilers for the book and for the movie.
Yeah.
How had this story not been done before? It's so simple. It's like everyone that has these types of stories, when they involve space and other planets, they push it more into the realm of sci-fi, and for it to just be a guy trying to survive on Mars, it's so simple that like it's crazy that it took so long to get done.
The material that he based it on is from like the 1960s serials and like the 1950s serials. I'm sure this story had been done there. The thing that made this different, and Adam Savage says it in the interview, the thing that makes this story different is he fucking shows the math, and somehow it's still compelling. Like you have to,
it should be boring. It should be boring as fuck.
But he sat around thinking for years, if we did a mission to Mars, what would that look like? And then he sat around for years thinking, okay, if things went wrong, what would you do? Because at least in 6 days, you can get rescued if you're on the moon, if you can survive that long. If you're on Mars, you're just fucked. And that concept, he just kept thinking about it until eventually he was like, you know what, this would be a good story. Like he's like, what's his name in Knives Out, grabbing a pen and paper. You know, this would make for an interesting story as he's fucking dying from a morphine overdose.
Harlan Thrombey,
yes,
I think is his name.
He's like fucking Harlan Thrombey. Like, you know, the more I think about this, and
it's exactly like that.
So he he wrote about an astronaut getting stuck on Mars, but he wanted to use everything that is in the book and in the movie is technology we have today, slightly better than what we currently have. Because I think 2035 is the year this is set or something. And he had to fudge some of the technologies to make things work, things like that. But
it's all in like a realistic trajectory.
Yeah,
I think was like what he was going for. Yeah,
he's such a nerd, and I mean that in the best way. He's such a lovable dork that one of his hobbies is calculating orbital mechanics by hand, and that comes through in the book, my friend. Like,
I can barely spell orbital mechanics by hand. Yeah, it's crazy.
He must just fucking slaughter Kerbal Space Program. Like I can't imagine.
Yeah. Just absolutely ace that shit. Or maybe it's like a Glass Onion thing where like where fucking Benoit Blanc is awful in Among Us.
Right.
Maybe he's just like absolutely garbage at Kerbal Space Program, even though he can write an entire novel about the logistics of fucking Mark Watney staying alive on Mars.
Dude, quick aside. Sometimes I find him grating, so I find him hard to watch sometimes, but Northern Lion on YouTube, you need to watch him play Kerbal Space Program. Because that is some of the funniest shit I have ever seen. The guy had zero understanding. I don't even think he understood what the game necessarily is. I mean, kids that are learning planetary orbits and rocket science in school use Kerbal Space Program as a simulator. I don't think he knew anything about it going into it. And the amount of times he explodes, and in some of the funniest ways, often on the launch pad. And then you just see like this hard cut when he's been doing research and finally starts doing like asparagus staging and stuff. But for like the longest time, like he just keeps adding more and more rockets, so the explosions keep getting bigger and bigger and crazier. It's one of the funniest things I've ever seen.
Yeah, because that game, it's like 1-to-1, right? That you have to make it work as if it was actually launching from like a launch pad in real life, right?
Someone that you and I follow, the other Geoff from Rage Select.
I'm the only Geoff. Fuck you,
Geoff from Rage Select. He uses a pad and paper to calculate his delta V sometimes for a Kerbal Space Program.
Crazy.
He's done it enough that he can kind of eyeball it, and he gets it pretty good when he plays. But yeah, and then Matt Lown just makes it look like he's playing the fucking Sims. It's insane. But anyways,
I have so much respect for people that can understand the way the trajectories and shit work to get something off of the planet, because that entire field of science just doesn't work in my brain. It just goes in one ear and out the other, and I can't comprehend it. So it's just fucking witchcraft to me.
I feel bad wording it this way because I know he spends hours because he speeds his videos up 12 times. But Matt Lown will slap together a spaceship, and I know it takes him hours to do it, but some of them are like built for comedy. Like he puts thought and thoughtfulness into his design, but some of them are just straight up built for comedy. And then he'll just fucking fly it all over the solar system like it's nothing, and then come back. And I can barely get off the planet. I can barely make it to orbit.
Right.
In a actual like Apollo rocket. Just like, what the fuck?
So he originally was releasing this like serialized and individual chapters and shit. And then the novel, the first like fully put together novel it's published, comes out I think 2014. That's the version I read. Okay, but later on, Andy Weir was fucking writing additional chapters, including this epilogue that I was first introduced to on the Audible version. Because if you listen to the new Audible version that has Will Wheaton doing the narration for, it has these extra chapters. One of them is an epilogue that is really good that I liked a lot. It's a little bit controversial because people think it's a little bit too like cheesy. Do you want me to just like tell you like what the epilogue is?
Yes,
like
please.
The gist of it. Okay, so the epilogue of the new version that's on Audible is Watney is at a bar like I think like a couple of years after the events of the book, and maybe it's a few months. I forget the timeline, but it's after the events of the book. He's at a bar and he meets Lewis. Lewis has been recruited by this like super huge corporation that is going to create like a hotel on the edges of orbit and recruits Watney to and it's a little bit cheesy, but I like the way that it ends. My favorite part of it is he's at like a bar, right? And he orders a cheeseburger, and the waiter is like, so would you like steak fries with that? Or would you like waffle fries with that? He's like, do not bring me any fucking potatoes on this plate. I don't care that I get them for free. And that was my favorite part. The other ones, which are like less consequential to the overall story, are one of them is like a letter that Mark writes to his parents when he first gets the news that he's been picked to be on the Ares 3 program. Another one is from Mark to his parents, but the main one that like blew my mind was that he had written a fucking epilogue. The interesting thing about it, though, when I did some research on this and about the epilogue on Reddit, there are versions of the ebook that had these extra chapters that were written by, the official author. They were added to their ebooks, and then because of the DRM behind it, people had these extra short stories removed from their digital copies of the novel.
What, why?
And nobody knows why.
Oh, well,
it's nuts. Yeah. But then they're on the Audible version, so maybe that's why they were removed, because Audible wanted these like exclusive extra chapters for like the Will Wheaton like narrated version. I don't know. It's fucking nuts. But yeah, like the history of all the different ways this book has been adapted, kind of like released and shit is fascinating. But yeah, this was the first time I reread or listened to a book again since I was probably like a little kid. I just typically do not. Usually when I'm finding the time to like read a book or listen to a book, it's something new that I've had on my short list forever. This was the first time I actually like listened to one again since probably like elementary school. So that's like probably like the highest praise I can give this book. I absolutely adore this book. What got me jonesing for this was the announcement that we talked about with Project Hail Mary beginning filming. And
oh man,
after having listened to The Martian again, Project Hail Mary is close to being my favorite, even over The Martian, because of how much I love the characters in that.
It's so good.
And it's in a very, very similar vein to The Martian, where it's like the act of problem solving and that magical fucking sorcery, the way he writes it, that makes it interesting instead of boring. And I don't know how he does it, because I couldn't even begin to think about how do I take this and give it personality. And that's like, I think the biggest like strength of his is to take these concepts where he's basically like teaching you like step by step, like, things that you'd have to do in the situation. But it's always fascinating instead of boring. And that's always just been like absolutely mind-bending for me.
When I was recommending Project Hail Mary to you, I gave you the disclaimer that it goes harder on the math than The Martian. And I knew if you had a problem with that book, it was going to be that, because while it is still done really well, I didn't think that hiding the math in the story was done as well as it is in The Martian. It's more front and center with it. Because it's kind of what it's about, more or less. So I think with Project Hail Mary, I think the way that you read or listen to it makes a big difference, because I feel like that being more front and center would be more of like a hurdle if you were reading it versus like having it like read to you like the audiobook. Because the audiobook for that was so well done. That's like my favorite audiobook I've ever listened to by a country mile. I think it was done just expertly. So I could totally see that being. So with Project Hail Mary, did you read that first or did you listen to it first? Because I listened to it first. I have only listened to it. I've never read it.
You've only listened to it. Okay. Yeah, I had read The Martian and then just recently listened to The Martian, but my only experience with and I read Artemis. I haven't listened to Artemis.
Artemis is really good. It's oh god, what's her name? I just fucking blanked. You do audiobooks. Because she's perfect casting if they do the movie, which the rumor is they might.
Rosario
Dawson.
Yeah.
She is perfect casting for Jasmine. And she does I didn't know this. She has done several different audiobooks, and I've only
Really? didn't know that.
listened to Artemis, but she's really good in Artemis.
I might have to give that one a download because Artemis was the book of his that I liked the least. It was one I thought that was really good.
The least, you mean like in a Dark Souls 2 way, right? Like,
yeah, it was one of those where it's like I liked it a lot, but his other two books are my two favorite books of all time, pretty much. So it was almost impossible like to reach that height for me. But I think I would like, what I was gonna say though is I think I would like it better as an audiobook being read by her versus reading it.
Yeah, I can see that, especially since her performance is really good in it. For context, for those that don't know, Artemis is a heist on the moon, on a city, inside a city on the moon. And Project Hail Mary is about an astronaut with amnesia who is supposed to somehow save the Earth from a thing, but he doesn't know what, or who he is, or where he is, or what's going on.
And it's being filmed currently, directed by Lord and Miller.
Yes.
Drew Goddard is back to adapt it, which I think is fantastic, and the cast is looking really strong as well. So I'm so stoked for that fucking movie. I think it comes out sometime next year, and we're fucking going opening day to that. I can't. We're fucking going opening day. So let's kind of backtrack a little bit. So we've kind of talked about like the basic story of this. Let's talk about the actual like adaptation of it though, because I think there is a lot of interesting decisions as far as moving this from a very, very specifically written novel to where it has to work as a movie. And let's first do that by talking about the cast and crew. So this was directed by Ridley Scott, written by Drew Goddard off of the obviously like the novel by Andy Weir. And let's just start from there. Good God, does this movie look gorgeous? The landscapes on Mars look so fucking good. That's one of my favorite things about Ridley Scott. I think we've probably talked about this before with one of his other movies we've covered already, but I love how every time you're watching a Ridley Scott movie, it always looks like it was made 10 years after it released because of how like cutting edge and like sleek it looks.
Right.
So like this movie came out pretty much 10 years ago and it looks like it was made yesterday. And I think that is such a wonderful thing that Ridley Scott is able to accomplish with his movies. Is just like the how stylized and sleek they are.
Ridley Scott
I just love the way it looks.
Has a style, that he always does, and it works really well in this movie because, yeah, he's a lone astronaut trapped on Mars, but there's not really a bad guy. Like, it's not like Mars is a villain that's trying to kill him. Mars is just Mars. So you get these wide, sweeping views of how beautiful this planet is, and then his airlock explodes or something,
right.
It's interesting how just the way this movie looks and the style in which it's filmed. Because while like him sitting on the rock, looking out over this vista, while that is gorgeous, you also have these really intimidating vistas that are also equally beautiful of all the dust devils that go miles into the sky all around as he's driving.
They look like the fucking sandstorm thing in Fury Road.
Yeah.
It's like 1,000 feet high. It's nuts.
Yeah. Like while that is terrifying, it's just as beautiful as him just sitting on the rock looking out at this vista, right? Like it's incredibly well done. And you get those flyovers that Ridley Scott is. Have you ever watched a Ridley Scott movie that didn't have these extra huge wide shots? The opening to Alien has that.
Right.
When they're on LV-426 walking back in with John Hurt with the thing on his face, is done in this huge wide shot with the astronauts being really tiny on the bottom of the screen. And it's just a fucking storm at night where you can't see anything. But he's still doing his trademark wide shot.
He just has such like a
and
nobody
it looks
does like
good, by the way, that shot in Alien.
Nobody does like scope better. Like fucking Blade Runner. Blade Runner looks so lived in and massive,
dude.
And it's like when you take the nuts and bolts of Blade Runner, it should look like it's filmed on a fucking soundstage. it shouldn't work nearly as well as it does, but it feels so fucking lived in. Like,
Dude,
he's so good at creating like a scope for the setting.
I've been wanting to rewatch Blade Runner lately so bad, but it's not really streaming anywhere. So
I can let you borrow it. I think I've got it on Blu-ray.
I went on to Libby and downloaded the audiobook that's based on Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep or whatever. And I listened to that all the way through.
How'd you like it? I've never actually read the book.
It's not great.
It's not great?
It's not great.
Was that Philip K. Dick?
Yep.
That wrote that? Yeah, Philip K. Dick, to me, is one of those guys where conceptually he's always coming up with like good stuff because so much of his material has been adapted, you know, but I've always gotten the impression that it's not really an enjoyable read when you sit down to actually read it.
The thing that I don't like about it is the thing that I love about Hollywood Homicide, which is really weird. But it's like all this shit is happening to your main characters, but that's not the thing any of them are focused on. Like, they just don't give a shit that these things are happening. It's more like, man, how I would love to own a real sheep and not this mechanical sheep. Despite the fact that there's these androids that are trying to kill me and shit. Like, what is happening?
Yeah.
But that's like what I found so charming about Hollywood Homicide was when we watched that was this like, yeah, there's a murder case, but I would really like to sell this house over here in the hills. It's cost me a fortune to keep it. Or like, I'm going to go teach yoga and just walk outside and yell, Stella! Like, yeah. Anyway.
So this was adapted by Drew Goddard.
Fuck yeah, it was.
Yeah, you and I love some fucking Drew Goddard.
That hallway fight in the airlock, that got real weird.
He is an alumnus of Screenplay Rewind because he was the director and writer of Bad Times at the El Royale, which we covered a while ago, which you and I are both forever championing. That was just not seen by enough people.
We were the only two in the theater.
Right. That movie's so fucking good, dude.
And
God
when I
damn
say
it.
in the theater, I mean
so
across the nation, apparently.
So Drew Goddard, I think, does some really brilliant things to adapt this. Because so much of the book is focused on these written journals from Watney, where he is kind of detailing the step-by-step process of what he's doing. What Drew Goddard then does to adapt this is Matt Damon kind of both talking to himself and also talking to the camera that's there as like a video journal, which I think is brilliant because then you're able to fully convey some of these chapters from the novel, which are entirely just like, you don't have another character have a line of dialogue until like 60, 70 pages in, in the book, because at the very beginning, it is just Watney.
It's like chapter
waking
4
up.
or chapter 5 when they bring in NASA for the first time.
Yeah, because they don't know that he's alive until it's been over a month of, and they happen to like catch on the satellite reports that, you know, like stuff's being moved around and cleaned and stuff. So the beginning of the book is so focused on him working the problem, you know, like trying to figure out how he can, you know, live long enough to survive being stranded on Mars. And what's interesting too is there are huge sections of the book of like just shit happens, like shit going wrong. Particularly, I found it interesting how much is cut when he's in the rover going to the Ares 4 Mav. Like there's an entire subplot thing, you know, like where he goes into a sandstorm thing, and because what is charging the rover needs to, you know, like to survive and to get there is working off of solar panels, like he's completely fucked if he gets submerged by this storm too bad, and that is entirely cut from the movie. But I can't really blame them for cutting that because the movie as it stands is already 2 hours and 20 minutes, so like you have to make some sacrifices in the story, and I think
how he works around that problem is interesting. I don't know how interesting it is to watch. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's compelling as fuck in the book,
right.
But it's not. It doesn't work as well in a movie point of view. I agree.
The one that I'm surprised got cut because visually it would work perfectly is him flipping the rover.
Yeah, I was shocked that wasn't in the movie.
Yeah,
but I do understand like the mindset of them when you're like converting this into a movie, right? And you gotta have like a 3-act structure for it. That would essentially make like like 2 third acts, because the third act, they in the movie they smartly make it all about him launching and then having to be retrieved from the Mav. But yeah, I just always thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
Because you could have had him flipping without it being related to the sandstorm. He could have just had to flip the rover, but I guess it's also kind of like anticlimactic, in a way. I don't know.
Sandstorm. It was a crater. There was just an empty pocket in the sand that his tire went into. It hasn't.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Yeah, that's what I was saying. It was like it wasn't related to the sandstorm, so they could have had it without having that sandstorm thing. But it's like I guess it's kind of anticlimactic to just have him like crash and then like lift it back up. I don't know.
I'm surprised that they didn't even include something as simple as the rover can only home in on the Hab because what else would be out there to home in on? And they have the Mav for Ares 4 over in Schiaparelli Crater. They change its programming so that it's putting out the same signal as the Ares 3 Hab. So there's a point when he's driving around, he's not aimless. He just doesn't know how accurate he is because he's having to use one of the moons during the day, its movement, and take the position of a particular star in the sky at night. So that during the day and that at night, and calculate his position because Mars doesn't have a magnetic field. He can't use a compass. So
he's having to use like constellations, like like sailors did hundreds and hundreds of years ago.
He talks about the irony of being on another planet in a spacesuit using a sextant from the 16th century.
Yeah,
but there's a certain point where he's still pretty far away from the Mav, but he gets a blip on his scanner on the rover because it thinks it's driving towards the Hab, but they have changed the Mav to mimic the Hab's signal, so now he can just beeline straight for it and not waste any more time navigating.
Yeah, like you could have had like a 5-minute scene of like him thinking he was
hear
completely
a blip
lost,
and him look down and see the Hab, but he knows he's not anywhere near the Hab, so it can only be that NASA did the one thing they can do to help.
Yeah, I almost wonder if it was the mindset of the book is such like Murphy's Law, like every little thing that can go wrong goes wrong. Yeah. And in the movie, they're presenting like the main points of conflict with during his stay. Like the food supplies being fucked up when the airlock implodes. And then they have like the issue of him beginning to starve to death, and then they have obviously like when he's rocketing into space at the end. But my point with like all the changes is that I think they perfectly keep like the spirit of the book in place, even though they're removing like certain plot points. It always feels like The Martian. Yeah.
And in those interviews, Andy Weir talks about them running screenplays by him.
Oh, really?
So yeah, he saw screenplays and they would get his take and he would write notes and send it back. So
I think that's so smart. Yeah. That way you can still kind of keep the tone of it, because there is like a way you could adapt this that totally loses the spirit of what makes it The Martian in the first place. And I think they were really smart to keep him involved, because like there's a way this movie could have been adapted and it would have been the most like generic bullshit, Yeah. But they really, you can tell they put a lot of effort into making this as faithful to the book as possible, and I think it really works. Let's talk about the cast. This might be the greatest film of all time because it has Matt Damon, and Ron likes it because Ron fucking hates Matt Damon.
Well, here's the thing. What's funny is, as much as I can't stand watching Matt Damon, he couldn't be more Mark Watney. Like,
he's so good. He's perfect. Perfect
like,
for this.
No matter what movie he's in, he's simultaneously Matt Damon playing Mark Watney, even years before this book was written.
Right. You just got a pump a smartass, and you got Matt Damon.
When I picked up the book, I think when the movie was getting ready to come out, I had already seen the trailer, and I picked up the book and read it. And I remember when the trailer came out, I was just like, "Oh, come on!" And then I read the book, and I was like, "No, I get it.
He's perfect.
Matt Damon's
he's perfect.
Perfect casting. I get it."
Yeah, he's so good. I think he does such a good job of so much of the movie is just him talking to a camera. You know, he doesn't really have actors to play off of for the vast majority of it. And I think he does a really good job carrying those sequences. And obviously he can deliver smart ass lines, because that's, you got a smart ass person in space, and that is an Andy Weir novel. That's actually something that I think is going to be interesting with him going forward, is now that we've had 3 smart ass person in a space situation books, I would like to see him kind of like stretch his legs a little bit and go in a different direction. But when 2 of those are 2 of my favorite books that have ever been written, I can't like criticize him too much. But did you ever hear about what led to like, he might have even talked about it in that video interview you're talking to me about, but he, after The Martian, was like trying to write like an actual science fiction thing. Did you hear about this?
Yeah. It had a weird name. It started with a K or something.
He had like this like Dune kind of style, very, very detailed science fiction epic thing going on that he got like a long way into and then realized it was shit, and then just completely set aside the book. And then that's what happened to lead to Artemis. He kind of like went back to his roots with, you know, like, because the Artemis and Project Hail Mary have a lot of DNA from The Martian in them, as far as, you know, like smart ass person in science, like a fucking space situation. And that's, you know, like Andy Weir .text.
Yeah.
But what are your thoughts on like him going forward, as taking aside like the movie aspect of it? Like, would you like to see kind of more of the same? Would you like to see him kind of like step out of his wheelhouse more? Like, what would you like to see in like the next Andy Weir novel?
Well, I mean, he's done it 3 times right now, and all 3 of them are very different, very compelling books. I mean, the dude's doing what he loves, you know. I kind of
it's
fine
tough
with him just being the kind of hard sci-fi math guy. Because
it's tough.
He is writing for the fun of it, and the guy is obsessed with manned space flight. He watches every documentary that comes out, every movie that comes out, reads every book, anything that is about manned space flight. He is all about. So like he's doing it, right? Like he's living the dream. And I think that comes through in his writing. You know, it doesn't seem like it's a grind when you read his book, like it is sometimes when you pick one up.
You want to know what I love about like his writing style in particular? I used to listen to a writing podcast by C. Robert Cargill that was called Ride Along, and he had an upload on the podcast.
Explain
where they were talking about
to me. Is that WR?
Yeah, WRIT, Right Along.
That is clever.
It was a really, really great podcast.
Can we
that
pay
went for a few
them
years.
to name our next podcast?
Right? We need some fucking workshopping.
That's fucking deep. That's like 3 layers deep.
It's really strong.
All right.
So
continue.
No, you're fine. The topic of it was, what is like the difference in mindset when you're writing a screenplay versus writing a novel? And I thought it was really interesting if like Cargill's like approach it, because he's done both. He's written novels and he's written screenplays. And he said that the main difference in them is when you are writing a screenplay, every single line in the screenplay that doesn't develop plot and doesn't develop character is kicked out of the script. He said every single line has to have like momentum behind it. And I think that's what Andy Weir does in his novels. Even though it's a novel, it's written like a screenplay, because like every line is always important. Like it's always developing plot or it's developing character. It's like the exact opposite of, we've talked about this a few times recently, but like with Stephen King. Stephen King is like writing with minutia. Like he is writing so much detail that the people that love his books love them, because there's so much detail they get like lost in it, and they can like just take a deep dive into the story.
I just plain got lost and turned it off.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where it's like I like the books that feel like they have momentum behind them. I like The Martian. I don't like this 2,000-page thing where it is just, it's like it's kind of drowned by detail and like superfluous things that don't matter. I love that like everything matters. Like especially like when you get to the, you know, like the second half of like Project Hail Mary, like it has so much momentum behind it. Like I could not stop listening to that book. I fucking loved it so much.
Yeah,
and great. I loved it so much. I can't wait for the fucking movie. I'm so excited. But yeah, I think that I've been thinking about that a lot. Like that podcast I was talking about, how it's interesting. Like the thought process behind the way it's constructed leads to like such a difference in the way that the story proceeds. And I think like Andy Weir versus like Stephen King is like an interesting thing where it's like Stephen King is a fucking genius. He's created what, like 30 of the most famous movies of all time. They were adaptations of his stuff, you know, like just crushes it with concepts. But I've always disliked his writing style, and it's like on the opposite side of the spectrum is something like The Martian, and I think that's why these books work for me so well. And I think they did a great job adapting that type of momentum to the movie.
Yeah.
Does this make sense at all? What
Yeah,
I've been
no, I
battling
get
about
you.
over the last. Okay. It's just been kind of like jostling around in my brain a lot the last few days,
I think
because you know, like I just finished Project Hail Mary a few weeks ago, and then both watched The Martian again and listened to it again. So it's just been kind of jostling around in my head.
I think what I like about his writing style, and ironically enough, it's kind of Drew Goddard's screenplay style as well, is it just kind of puts everything out on Front Street. Like, there's no real prose to it. It's not like reading a Lord of the Rings or anything, you know, like
Yeah, I can see that.
it's just direct and to the point, but in a compelling, but like the story is compelling enough that nobody needs to gussy it up. And what is happening in the story is compelling enough. No one needs to write around it. So it makes it just, well, I mean, they're log entries, right? It's literally him directly telling you what happened. Because
Right.
you never see him in the moment except when he's being rescued, right? Everything is a log entry. I think that's the only time you see him in real time. And
I think so.
And you know, anything Drew Goddard, anything you've watched, TV show or movie that he has written or adapted, it kind of feels that way also, you know. And I'm making it sound like it's simple. None of this is simple or plain, but it's so like the mark of someone who really knows what they're talking about. This mark of a good communicator that really knows something is that they can tell someone who knows nothing about it, you know, in a way that they understand. Whether you're talking about science or math or whatever, someone who is a good communicator that truly understands the ins and outs of it can explain it like a layperson. And you see these people on like CNN and stuff like Michio Kaku and people like that, Neil deGrasse Tyson, Bill Nye, people like that. You see them pop up.
Mhm.
And that's kind of the way the book is written, and that's kind of the way Drew Goddard writes anything from Daredevil to Bad Times at the El Royale. And then
It's like streamlined.
yeah, I have to imagine that as talented and good as Drew Goddard is, this kind of matching his writing style to begin with, I'm not going to say it was easy because writing is not easy, but it had to be a relief to him to read the book. I'd be like, oh, I can do this because it's written kind of in his, it is written as a novel in his visual style. Like, it's really weird how perfect this is for Drew Goddard to adapt, you know?
Yeah, there's no coincidence that Lord and Miller circled back to hire Drew Goddard to write the next Andy Weir adaptation that's happening. You know, like that's no coincidence.
If they do Artemis,
they saw
also,
the same thing.
I guarantee you it'll be Drew Goddard.
Absolutely, because he does it so well. I like he has certain like exchanges in the movie that are like, you know, like word for word, but a lot of it is changed up a little bit. What are your thoughts? We'll circle back to the cast here in a second, but what are your thoughts as far as him kind of switching around character roles? Like, one of my only issues with the book, for instance, is the ending kind of removing Lewis, because I actually like the decision. I know it's a little bit more Hollywood, but like when they actually have Lewis doing the tethered part of the ending, you know, like to get Mark.
Mm-hmm.
That always felt to me something that Lewis would have said, fuck no, like if any one of us are going to die doing this, is going to be me. That always felt like something she would do. And I always found it weird that she didn't in the book, and liked that they changed that for the movie. So like, what are your thoughts on like him kind of keeping the gist of like the spirit of the story, but kind of moving around the pieces of the characters?
So from a movie writing standpoint, right? It makes sense because it's a shot at redemption for the character, right? She feels responsible
Exactly.
for leaving him behind and all
yeah.
that. Where that clashes for me with the story and the book is how honest and true this book is trying to be about real life astronauts. Beck is the EVA specialist. That's why Beck is the one that was going to be the one to go out. That's why he's the one that goes out in the book. He is the one that is specifically trained to do this. And his backup, in case anything happens to him, is Vogel. Vogel is also out in the airlock with Beck, standing by to rescue both of them if he has to. And that's the way astronauts work. They have their roles, they have their jobs. Lewis is the commander. She would be on the bridge of the ship orchestrating things, while Beck, the guy specifically trained to do this job, would go out and get him, and his backup is the one pulling them in.
Yeah, I always thought like a workaround, because I understand like the logistics of it. It doesn't make sense for the commander to be doing it. To me, what they could have done, have Lewis be the backup to Beck.
Yeah.
And then have Beck get like injured as he's coming back in from setting up the bomb. Then she is forced in that situation, and then gets the moment to where it's like it makes like logistical sense from like their kind of procedures, and also makes sense for the character, because the ending of the book with the third act, it has like you're so like caught up in the moment that it has like a lot of like compelling aspects to it. But one like complaint that some people have with the book is that everything kind of happens too like neatly with this part of the story. Mm-hmm. So I actually I like the aspects of the movie kind of like ramping up the drama a little bit with it, because it also kind of like keeps in like theme with like the story, because one of the main things was where it's like fucking Murphy's Law, like everything that can go wrong goes wrong. But then in the book, when they get to this part of the story, everything just kind of happens perfectly. Like, yeah, the crew has to do a whole bunch of shit to make it work to where they can have like enough speed to, you know, like get to Mark at the right altitude, and like have it like slow down enough to where they can, you know, like make it physically possible to retrieve him. But it's a little bit too like smooth of like a sequence in the book, where I kind of like it where shit kind of hits the fan, even though like it is obviously more like Hollywood, but I think it makes sense to make it more like compelling, because it kind of happens a little bit too neatly for me at the ending of the book. I don't know if you have the same kind of reaction to it that I do.
No, I mean, I think the book, they do run into problems. Like the ship is failing because it's not getting its maintenance and stuff. Like fucking Michael Pena's character is sleeping in the airlock because his room's being irradiated. So I don't know. I think I kind of like the way the book does it better with the crew. I don't think you need Beck to be injured when they're setting the bomb. I think it's enough to just switch the roles around. It would still make sense if Lewis is EVA specialist or whatever, or
be the backup,
or the backup, but she's also the commander. So no, you're my backup this time. You know, something. Because as the backup, she would have the same training. It would make sense for her to also be the backup if she's the fucking commander.
I just think they
out doing all the EVAs too. So, like, I think it'd be enough just to juggle the roles to get the same. Just
do something.
Done. Yeah, and then it would,
because I think it makes
the spirit of the book that way.
Because it does feel like a dropped plot thread.
Yeah.
As far as her, like, yeah, she saves them because she's commanding the mission and figures out some of the things that lead to them being in position to retrieve him. But I like the idea of her being so terrified to lose another person that she, no matter what, is doing it. And I agree. I think she should have been the backup, and either he gets injured somehow, or she just flat out commands him like, no, you're not going. Because I think that would have been a better way to go about it.
They would both have the same training. If he's the EVA specialist and she's the backup, it doesn't mean she has less training. It just means if something goes wrong with him, and it would make sense for her to be the backup because you wouldn't want the commander being on the front lines doing that. So, it would make sense that she would just be like, no, this time you're my backup, and just leave it at that.
Exactly, but it also works because like we're analyzing it like a movie, and it was written to be legit,
right?
Like real life doesn't have completed character arcs sometimes,
right?
Like we're approaching it like a story, and Andy Weir was writing it like a situation. But all these conversations are probably conversations that Goddard and Ridley Scott had when they were adapting this and like getting the input.
They're probably also conversations Andy Weir had in his head. Right,
for sure. I would have liked to have been a fly on the wall for those conversations of of them talking about the script, because like I'd be curious what like Andy Weir's thoughts are on like the changing of the ending, because it does drastically change the kind of extent to which this is a like Hollywood story versus a legitimate scientific situation that he was like setting out to write.
Yeah,
because and it's one of those things where it's like, it doesn't ruin the book for me at all that she doesn't have a completed character arc, but it makes sense for them to go about doing that for the movie, but they also could have done a better job as far as like the details behind leading to that. But I like aspects of the ending of the book better, and I like aspects of the movie better, and it's like each of them have like just minor little things.
The reason that there's that dichotomy is because they're both really strong properties, right? The book is a really good book, and the movie's a really good movie.
Yeah.
So, and because they're different mediums, things have to be different between them. That's going to make differences for you. You're going to like some aspects of one, because a book can take its fucking time. A movie's on the clock. It's got to get in and get out.
I think that's another strong suit of the movie too. The pacing's really strong. The movie does not feel like a 2.5 hour movie to me. It feels a lot more streamlined in its pacing for me, even though a lot of the time it's just like fucking Matt Damon planting potatoes. I'm so fucking compelled by Matt Damon planting fucking like potatoes that when the fucking hab implodes and you see his farm get destroyed is such a heartbreaking moment, because he spends so much time setting up those fucking potato plants.
That's one of my favorite scenes in the movie, because in the book they're all log entries. Everything is post event, right? It's already happened. He's already had the emotions. He's already calmed down, and now he's telling you about it. In the movie, so some people were mad. It turns out that this movie wasn't going to be R. They wanted it PG-13 to get more people in seats. And that is something I think the movie handles extremely well, because somebody on set, I don't know if it's Ridley Scott or who, or Drew Goddard, someone at some point realized, we have a space movie. Yeah, Mars has an atmosphere, but it's 1% of that of Earth's. There's going to be virtually no sound. So all we have to do is move the camera outside of the rover as he's having a fucking tantrum.
And you can read his lips and tell exactly what he's saying.
You know exactly what's going on. If you don't hear any audio, and it makes sense, you're not in the rover with him. It's not like they just muted Matt Damon. You're just looking from the outside in as he's punching the top of the rover and screaming.
So good.
And that works, like the way the book does it, it works really, really well. And then the way they translate that into the movie, it works really, really well. So, it's really interesting. You could do a fucking dissertation on comparing the way this book is written and the way the movie's written, and how it keeps the spirit of the book so well.
I think, we talked about it when I picked this at the end of the last episode we had, but like I think this is such an underrated adaptation. Like this is to me like my favorite adaptation of a book I think I've seen.
I agree. I think it's the best. It's not word for word. It's close enough that the people that want it to be word for word are satisfied. It's different where it needs to be different. The things that they drop, while they make me sad because I would have liked to have seen them,
it makes sense.
It makes total sense. I probably would have dropped it also. And I've never heard Drew Goddard or Ridley Scott talk about it. So, I mean, there's got to be moments that Drew Goddard was just like, how do I keep him flipping the rover in the movie? How do I keep the dust storm? Well,
How good to like there is a way that Andy Weir does the chapters in the book that is so incredible. So before the hab implodes, you get the background like life story of this single little patch of fabric
Yeah.
that makes up the hab, and then as soon as they cut to those sequences, you're like, oh no, because when the movie when the book hard cuts to some random thing like that, you just immediately go, oh no, what's about to go wrong? And they do it again because he does this like this intermittent thing where he's cutting back to like the lifespan of this individual. Like he even has the serial number of like the patch.
Yeah, and
that
talks
fucks
about,
up.
like Commander Lewis unfolding it from the pack and attaching it to the hab when they built the hab. Like
It's
the entire life story from the time it was manufactured, shipped to Mars, everything.
It's so good. And then he will cut back to like Mark doing something or NASA doing something, and then cut back to like a further development in the lifespan of that fucking patch
From the
of
patch's
fabric.
perspective. Like
It talks about like it getting like shipped because of some like reason like behind like the science behind it. It says like they keep cutting back and forth, and then he does it later again with the bit of dust that causes the rover to like trip over,
yeah.
where he's talking about like the lifespan of this like little bitty
of a car
patch.
tripping, Geoff. Next time I hear a car flipped or something, and I tell someone about, hey, did you see the other day when that person on 71st Street tripped to their car? Like,
well, I mean, you get what I'm saying though, because of the way that the
you're
car
not wrong.
like
The front wheel sank as he's driving downhill, and then it flipped.
yeah.
I mean, you're not wrong. It tripped.
But like he does that with that too, where he goes back and he's talking about like the fucking backstory of this little patch of fucking Mars dust, and you're just like, oh no. And I love that bit of dramatic irony where you the reader is instantly like, oh fuck, what's gonna happen now? But they obviously can't do that in the movie. But those are some of my favorite bits of like writing because
the airlock explosion is what you're talking about with the fabric when it rips. And a book is not a visual medium, ironically. I always thought that was ironic because it's a thing you're looking at with your eyes, but it's not a visual medium. And like what you're talking about, it sounds boring, but when you read it, you can't stop reading it.
It's such a page turner because it's like it switches to become it's also like a shock to the system for the reader because it switches to like third person omniscient, and that is very counter to the way the main like portion of the book is, as far as like a first person like
this book breaks all the rules of writing a book basically in the best way.
Exactly.
Like Adam Savage talks about how you're in third person, and then you're in first person. For like the first 4 chapters, and we switched to third person, and he was like, I don't think I've ever read a book that did that.
But it makes sense because it is a log.
It's two different books, right?
Yeah.
There's the book about NASA saving a guy on Mars, and there's the book about the guy on Mars trying to get his ass back to Earth.
Just writing the journal of shit that he did for the day, because what else is he gonna do? He's gonna write a journal about what he did.
Right.
He has something like no one else, and he's trying to survive, but you can tell for the like entire like long sections for the first like half of the book, like he thinks he's fucked because he is fucked until they start to figure shit out. How ingenious is the idea of getting Pathfinder to be like a relay device, by the way? I love that bit in the book and in the movie where they're trying like Kapoor goes to pull out the map in the fucking break room to figure out what he's doing because they didn't think that he would go pick up Pathfinder to use it as a fucking radio.
I like in the book when he's like, I need a map, and then he's like, I can just pull it up. He's like, no, I need a map I can ride on. Like he specifically needs something he can ride on. But, hey, are you riding on our map?
So let's quickly jump back to the rest of the cast. We'd obviously talked about Matt Damon. I love him in this. I think he was perfectly cast. I totally agree with you.
Real quick about me finishing my thought on, you were talking about the airlock exploding. Like one of the differences we're talking about is like you, the reader, start getting information that Mark Watney does not have. Right. it talks about how he prefers this one airlock because it's the closest one to the rover. The other two are on the other side of the hab. He can get in and out of this quicker using this one airlock. And it's only built for X number of cycles. And the most amount of stress is here. And he's doing his inspections, but because it's in a corner, it's hard to see. You have to be at a
covered
specific
up.
angle.
He literally can't see it.
Yeah, and there's just this stress that keeps... It talks about compressing and decompressing, stretching and pulling the fabric, and then releasing it, then stretching it again. And then finally, it just casually talks about the astronaut being launched 50 meters from the hab and the way he's bouncing around and his face mask completely exploding. And just this casual write out of everything that happened as it's happening. And then I think on the next log entry is like, well, I'm fucking dead or whatever. Like, because how's he going to get out of this one? You can't do that much buildup in the movie. So it just being nice and quiet, him doing his routine thing, and then just when he goes flying like out of a cannon.
It totally works. It totally, they both work perfectly for their format.
Yeah.
Because like that is good like surprise and shock out of nowhere for like a movie, but it's also a wonderful use of dramatic irony for the book.
Yeah.
Because it builds such like a feeling of dread because you know something is about to happen with this piece, because like why else would they be detailing it so much, and why would they be switching to third person omniscient to write it?
I also like how when it does that, by the way, the book switches to the astronaut, or the lone astronaut. It's like the astronaut is slowly driving down the hill unaware of that pocket we're talking about in the dirt in front of him, and then as the rover flipping, like I don't know, it just, whenever it describes him when we're talking about the goddamn pothole on Mars or the airlock, it switches to the astronaut. It doesn't call him Mark.
It's so like
clinical.
It's so detached and like uncaring,
which
about
Mars
Mark.
is, right?
Exactly. Yeah. It's just you know what? It just shit happens. You know, the fucking the piece of fabric was expanded too much and it condensed too much over and over and over again.
I like how NASA was like, cycle your airlocks from now on. So he had to switch between the other two each time he did it. But yeah. Anyway, sorry. We were going through the cast like an hour ago.
Yeah. So we apologize for being all over the place, but we're basically doing a movie review and a book report and how they intertwine at the same time.
And we're very excited to be doing this episode of the podcast.
Yeah, because we're both fucking nerds and we adore this movie and this book. So yeah, just what are your thoughts on Jessica Chastain just in general? I am typically not like a big Jessica Chastain fan, but I like her in this. What do you think?
So there's only one time that I liked her and I didn't realize it was her, and it's not in this movie. She is very flat to me and very one-dimensional.
I
in her
agree.
Performances.
I agree.
She always just seems like
uninterested in the movie.
It always feels to me like she has a hard time connecting with the character or something. Like she's just, someone told her to be shocked, so she literally looks like someone trying to act shocked, whereas like she's standing next to Michael Pena and it's a day and night contrast. Like it, I don't know.
It's bizarre because she has this like reputation. She's won a fucking Oscar. You know, like
she's
has
on
this
the
reputation.
poster. Her name's on the poster.
There's a bit
on the
of
one-man show. Her name's on the poster.
So the reason I like her, I don't think she's fantastic in this, but the reason I like her in this is I think she's a pretty good match for Lewis, because Lewis is very like reserved and cut and dry, to where her kind of like detached way of like going about conversations and everything, I think kind of works for the character of Lewis. But just in general, I agree. I don't really understand the kind of like hype surrounding her as an actress.
Like you could switch her out halfway through a movie with Bryce Dallas Howard and I wouldn't notice.
I think Bryce Dallas Howard has a lot more charisma than Jessica Chastain
think she does, but like they look just enough alike and they sound just enough alike and they kind of act the same way, except Howard has more charisma, like you said. I don't know that I would notice if you switched them on me halfway through a movie.
You know what her performances remind me of? Jessica Chastain, the way that she is almost always acting reminds me of Julianne Moore in her movies when she's bored by the movie.
Yes.
And just very reserved and like just very like detached from it's like it's just weird. Like uninterested in filming is like what it comes across to me sometimes. And I know that sounds like really damning. Like I don't think she's horrible, but she does just come across as uninterested in the movies.
When she's in the movie with Chiwetel Ejiofor and Sean Bean and Michael Pena and Jeff Daniels, it stands out.
Yeah,
you know, like she's
Sebastian Stan. Even like the other people on the ship have like more charisma than her. Like obviously Michael Pena is like charisma incarnate, so that's not a fair comparison. But even the like Sebastian Stan, the vocal guy. They all have the vocal guy. The vocal dude. But even dude, Kate Mara also has a lot of roles where she looks bored as fuck by being in the movie. Kate Mara has some more charisma in this than fucking Jessica Chastain does, which is weird.
Yeah, I don't know. She there's when they're having the round table, when they're deciding on the mutiny, is where it really is front and center, and it really bothers me. Because she sounds like, you know, that's not a word I throw around lightly. You sound like you couldn't give less of a shit you're about to commit mutiny. Like, you don't even sound like you're considering it when you're talking about it.
It's weird.
That and the I left him behind, you're following orders. You were following orders. Everything else she's fine in. Actually, her flat delivery on everything and her general seemingly uninterested, like you were talking about, actually works really well on one of my favorite lines in the movie, which is, I need you to come back inside and build a bomb. Like that little stumble that she does.
Yeah, it's weird, right?
It sounds like she's processing it in her head as she's saying it out loud, and then realizes what she's saying.
You know what? I think it's a weird delineation between being uninterested and being like cool, calm, and collected.
Yes.
There's moments where her, like, the way that she performs the lines comes across as like calm and collected. Like, I need you to come in here and build a bomb. And they're like, what the fuck did you just say? But she's so like nonchalant about it that it really works. I
need to point out that building an explosive device on a space station.
The time that I think she actually does a really good job, and part of the reason I end up kind of liking her in this is I think she does a good job when she grabs Mark at the end.
Yeah,
like I think their scene together actually has like a lot of like emotional depth to it, and it's a really great moment because you want him to be saved so fucking bad, both when you're reading the book and when you're watching the movie. And when it happens, I think that their conversation about like, why do you fucking like disco so much, whatever he says, is like it's a great moment.
Terrible taste in music.
It's so good. It's so good. I think she's good there, but otherwise I agree with you.
We spend an entire book building up to that one joke, by the way. But it's like Chekhov's disco. Yeah, no, there are legit moments in the book and in the movie, and a lot of them are the same moments that I legit tear up and want to cry.
Me too. You're so invested in it,
Pilot
man.
go for launch, and like everyone in Times Square busts out cheering and stuff.
Oh man, when they report back that like they got him, and you just see everyone lose their minds. It's such a good moment, dude.
It's so good.
Fuck, I love the story so much.
What's your take on Kristen Wiig as Annie?
I think she's pretty good. I usually don't like Kristen Wiig very much, but I think she's pretty good in this because she seems to fit Annie pretty well. Like, just
I wish. I've never said this about Kristen Wiig before. I wish they had given her more to do because Annie is one of the best parts of the book.
And she's a good match for Annie.
And she's a good match for Annie. They left out one of my favorite moments in the book where Annie has one of the best lines. And that is, I didn't like the way that they rewrote Mitch's argument with Teddy about which option we're going. We're going the safe option as opposed to sending the crew back. We're just going to send the supplies. And in the movie, Sean Bean just goes, "You're a goddamn coward," and calmly walks out of the room. In the book, he's about ready to throw Teddy out the window. He's
dropping F-bombs.
Yeah,
like in the meeting with them
in Teddy's face.
Yeah.
And Teddy is acting completely disconnected, and he's acting like a frustrated parent, more or less, with him. And then he does the most misogynistic thing, which is when it's all over, he turns to Annie and starts apologizing because sometimes when men get riled up and testosterone and crap or whatever, and then Annie just goes, "I wanted him to kick your ass," and he goes, "What?" And she's like, "'Cause if you had any balls, we could have saved Mark." And then she walks out of the room.
That moment, I even texted you one of the exchanges because I had forgotten like the details of the scene exactly because I hadn't read the book in so long. That exchange that I had texted you, where he was like, if I didn't have the balls to like to save somebody, I forget the exact line, but where he's like, "I'd be you."
Yeah, well,
it's such a good fucking moment.
Yeah.
It's such a good moment. Like that should have been conveyed 1-to-1, but what they end up doing is they kind of like make Mitch more of kind of like a sympathetic character. I would have kept it exactly the way it is in the book.
Yeah, he's supposed to be a dick. When you first meet him, he's supposed to be a total dick to Mindy.
Yeah, he's supposed to be an asshole and he's supposed to be aggressive, but you understand why he's pissed off because they have been overriding him the entire time, even though he's the flight director, and it technically should have been like his call to communicate with the crew.
And in the movie, in that scene, he's like looking over his shoulder nervously and stuff. Like, Mitch didn't give two shits about what anyone thought about what he was doing.
Because Mitch knows in the book that he has a checkmate on Teddy because Teddy can't go public with the information of it being a mutiny because that would make them look like idiots.
Right.
So I like the way that all goes down in the book much more, and I do like that exchange you talked about with Annie too, because
if he had any balls, we could have saved Mark or Watney. I don't think she calls him. I think she calls him Watney.
Because he's being such like he's being so condescending in addition to being sexist right then.
Yeah.
Because like I think what they were trying to do when they were adapting it is they kind of needed. They didn't want to spend too much time having the focus be on like character dynamics at NASA. They wanted the kind of the focus to be more on Mark.
But NASA is famously that way. Like if someone is 4 levels of management above you, you don't even speak to them directly, even if you're in the same room with them. Like you just don't do that. And that's one thing Mindy is talking about is in the movie is like she finds herself working with Venkat Kapoor, and he is literally 4 levels of management above her. And then she finds herself in the room with Teddy, and she's like the lowest level analyst in the room, and everyone else is directors and stuff. Like she shouldn't even be in the room with them. So the fact that Mitch is doing what he's doing to who he's doing it to is like a big deal because that is just the way NASA in real life operates. You just don't even make eye contact with people above you.
I think it also is meaningful for the story too to keep how aggressive they are to each other, especially from the Mitch perspective in the story, because
the jobs they're in, right? I mean, that's how they got there.
It also shows just how much this whole situation is taking a toll on the people at NASA because they're fucking working 80 hours a week, They're part of the reason they're always like so hostile is because they're fucking sleeping at their office.
Yeah.
Like they're working around the clock. They're like killing themselves to try to save this guy.
The thing,
and they just don't really fully convey that.
Yeah, the thing that's kind of missing is that Apollo 13 touch where Tom Hanks says, "What's that?" and there's just a note that says "no" taped over some switches, and Kevin Bacon's just like, "Oh, yeah, I hadn't slept in a while. I was getting punchy, and I didn't want to disconnect the lander with you guys in it." And he pulls the tape off, right? Because he was afraid he was going to eject his friends into space. Like so he literally wrote a note that just said "no" and taped it over the switches. Like that kind of aspect is missing a little bit.
I feel like they do a little bit too much as far as like kind of removing the teeth out of NASA.
Yeah,
because like everyone at NASA is pretty much likable. Even like Teddy does some things which are like pretty brutal. The way he just so like you understand like the mindset of what is it? Their main argument of when they're talking with Bruce, they're talking about like we have a high probability of killing one person or the low probability of killing 6 people. How do you make that decision? And Teddy's like mindset behind that does make a sense. You know, like you don't want to jeopardize.
He has to protect the Ares program.
Yeah,
you know,
and he's looking at it as a figurehead for the company versus like looking at it as like a human being. But he almost kind of has to, because what he's doing would also guarantee the survival pretty much of the other 5.
Yeah.
Mitch's whole thing makes sense too, because he's saying you should put it in their hands because it's Lewis's call. She's the commander of the ship, and I'm also the flight director. Yeah. They both have
I shouldn't
compelling
have to clear
points.
it with you or anybody else. I'm the flight director.
Yeah, I think they should have kept that 1-to-1, because it's a really compelling argument and a really compelling moment in the story, because it shows just how much like internal debate there is at NASA, and of course there is, because like Bruce says, like, how do you make that decision? It's a really fucked up decision either way. And I like that there's like a gray area behind that debate in the story in the book, but in the movie they kind of gloss over it to make everyone kind of the good guy at NASA. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and Teddy, while not a bad guy, is kind of set up to be the antagonist, because, like I said, he's got to protect NASA, the people, the astronauts, and Ares 4 and 5 are the next 2 missions, and we lose them if the crew dies. We can't rebuild Hermes if we lose Hermes either. So
exactly,
like he's trying to protect the Ares Mars program as well as the people, and I think he has a line in the movie that it's bigger than one person or something like that, and like that doesn't, like, he wants to save Mark, but he has more to think about than just saving Mark, you know. So
yeah, he doesn't want to jeopardize NASA.
He's kind of an unwilling antagonist. Like he doesn't want to be the bad guy, but someone has to be, because no one is thinking about the big picture. Everyone is just tied up and wanting to save Mark. I
also, by the way, think Jeff Daniels is a great pick for Teddy. Our complaints are purely from like the characterization from the writing side, and not from the performances. Yeah. I love Jeff Daniels, and I think Jeff Daniels was a perfect casting choice.
Not to speak for you, but just to clarify, when you say from the writing, we're not saying he's badly written either. It's the choice they made in the writing.
They take it in a different path that you and I didn't like.
Because we know the character better, you know. But he's a good character in the book. He's a good guy. He's thinking more as the director of NASA than just the cowboy riding in alone to save the day kind of mentality.
There's also a great moment with him in the book that I adore, where there's an ongoing theme with him where he has the blue folder and the red folder.
Yes.
And at the end, he says, you know, like, I think it's Kapoor who was talking to him about, you know, like, so I guess you didn't end up having to pull out the red folder. He's like, I didn't make one this time. I love that moment.
Yeah, I love that moment
where
too.
It's like, yeah.
Apparently that's something almost NASA like a bit of like actually does, by the way, and Andy Weir had no idea.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's
just a thing, a quirk he made for Teddy. Because Teddy, they do a little bit of this, but like in the book, Teddy, everything is laid out perfectly on his desk. Every hair is perfectly in place. His cufflinks are perfectly polished. Like, he's very eccentric about the way things look and appear, which comes through in, no, we're not risking the crew because it makes NASA look bad and all that. Like, that part of his character comes through real hard there. And in the movie, you have him checking his fingernails, you have him checking his cufflinks and stuff. But like in the book, there's a part where somebody sets something on his desk, and he absent-mindedly, while talking to them, reaches out and straightens it.
Yeah, he's painfully pragmatic.
Yes.
And very OCD.
He's almost a caricature, but he actually has a bit of a personality too.
How funny is it too that when they're talking about Project Elron, they keep switching to show Sean Bean. I love that.
Oh man, I love that everybody in the room knows what that means except for Annie, and they take out one of the best lines also, because she's just like,
none of y'all got laid in high school.
She's like, none of you got laid in high school, did you?
Yeah.
Oh, it's so good. Also, one of the best lines from Annie, real quick, at the near the end, when you hear Commander Lewis say that they are going to blow the airlock, and Kapoor is just like, oh my God. And she goes, well, fuck me raw, and stands up and starts packing her stuff up. And he's just like, they're going to deliberately blow the airlock. Oh God. And she's like, okay. She's like, I have to get to the press room now. Is there anything I should know going in there? And he goes, they're deliberately blowing the airlock. Oh my God. And she goes, got it, and runs out of the room. She's in damage control mode already, and he's still panicking.
Right. I love that.
Oh, it's so good.
So we've got a few minutes left. I don't want to go over 2 hours on this, so let's just quickly kind of touch on the rest of the cast that we haven't already spoken about, and then we'll kind of start wrapping this up, because you and I could talk about The Martian for literally 8 hours if we wanted to, because it's one of our favorite books. This isn't the next month. We're gonna have like a fucking WAF 4-parter, like
halfway through
12.
It's just like Soul 35. We should have done this in a vlog style like they did in the movie.
See, that would require talent, and you and I kind of fresh out of that. But so just to quickly run through the rest of the cast, then we'll do some kind of like closing thoughts. So we mentioned Kate.
We'll make it up
Kate
like Mark did along the way.
We're gonna science the shit out of the podcast. That might be the tweet when I write in a few days. So we had Kate Mara as Johansson. We talked about Jeff Daniels as Teddy Sanders. But Michael Pena might just be one of my favorite humans on the planet, I think, because every time Michael Pena is on screen in a movie, I'm just happy.
Yes.
I just love that fucking dude so much.
I love him so much, and he's one of the best characters in the book.
He's so good, and maybe the best casting is Michael Pena as Martinez, because Michael Pena is perfect for Martinez. Just fucking
something that doesn't come through
wonderful.
In the movie that I explained it to Chris, and she was like, "Oh," and I was like, "That's basically Mark's best friend," which is why he's the one typing the message to him in the movie and stuff. Like why they picked him.
Yeah, that's another thing that they are consolidating the character dynamics to mostly be focused on Mark and Lewis.
Yes,
and that was a deliberate choice. It's also, I think, a reason behind.
Can I?
What was this? What was it?
Can I say something that most people will see as a damning thing, but you know me well enough to know it's not?
Sure, go ahead.
That's the same thing the Paw Patrol movies do.
That is such a fucking, like, when you find a way to wrap it around to Paw Patrol. That is the highest praise Ron can.
Hey, at least I'm not a brony, right?
Do Paw Patrol fans have a little like fan name like Brony?
I don't know.
They probably do.
I don't know. I'm not in that
Somewhere.
subreddit, which I'm sure exists. I've never looked it up.
If it doesn't exist, you're gonna create it once this podcast recording's over.
Oh my god.
My only point was like that was a deliberate choice, but I like a lot of the exchanges that Martinez has with Mark once they're able to form communication in the book. It's really great. Sean Bean as Mitch, we talked about. I think Sean Bean would have been
/ Paw Patrol.
Of course there is. There's a fucking r / everything you could possibly imagine.
5,600 members.
I'm surprised it doesn't have more.
It's in the top 9% when ranked by size.
So with Sean Bean, we already talked about this, but I wish they had kept Mitch the way he is in the book. And I think Sean Bean would have been perfect for that, because Sean Bean is very likable, but can just be like an absolute asshole when he wants to be.
Yeah.
So he would have been a great choice for that version of Mitch, but that is not what we got in the movie. But it's overall, in the grand scheme of things, we still love the adaptation. It's just, you're never going to be able to one-to-one everything and perfectly translate everything when you are converting a 400-page novel into a 2.5-hour movie. It's just not going to happen.
Let's also not forget, I felt compelled to mention this every time we talk about Sean Bean in this podcast. He got into a real-life knife fight in a bar and won, and went back in the bar and continued drinking while bleeding.
I love Sean Bean.
So, I mean, the guy can hold his own in a movie, I'm sure.
We talked about Sebastian Stan is playing Beck. Axel Henny is playing Vogel,
which I don't know who he is, but I liked him.
I like you too. I feel like I've seen him in something else. I'm gonna quickly pull him up real quick just to see.
I know you're an evil scientist, dude. You got a German accent. You're a chemist. You've got a base out in space.
Oh, Do you remember that Sisu movie we wanted to see? He's apparently in that. So we'll eventually get around to watching Sisu, I think. So he's in that. Oh, he is in
Is he the guy that
Cloverfield
loses his
Paradox. He is, I think. I think that's where we saw him.
Okay.
They need to stop sending this guy to space because bad things happen.
Did you see in 2015? He's also in something called Ares 3: The Right Stuff.
Yeah,
as
they're
Alex
apparently like
Vogel.
little shorts made for this that I was not aware of. So
Interesting.
might have to check that out. We have Chiwetel Ejiofor that we talked about, who plays Kapoor. There was like a big shit show reaction to his casting for this.
Do you remember what they were saying? Do you remember them saying they whitewashed the character? That was the literal term they used.
Yeah, they were being racist to me in their own right by saying
on our old podcast.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with the mindset of we needed to have better representation. I get that. What you say in the headline of the article is that The Martian has poor representation of this individual, like, person and character in the story, not whitewashing when it doesn't apply to what fucking happened. You know, that like that is such a disrespectful and just blatantly lazy bit of headline writing to get clicks, and fuck them for that. I agree. They should have had better representation. But you need to go about your wording better than saying fucking whitewashing when they didn't pick a white dude for the character. Fuck off.
This is something I should not say. But just hearing the name Chiwetel Ejiofor, I can tell you the man's not white. Okay?
Right.
Like, that's all the information I need to know the character's not being whitewashed.
Yeah. It's fucking
that
stupid.
Community probably needed more representation, but
yeah, it should have been
claim whitewashing.
It should have been Muslim representation, but you can't call it fucking whitewashing when they pick Chiwetel Ejiofor to play Venkat Kapoor. It's not the exact same thing as whitewashing. Whitewashing is M. Night's Avatar: The Last Airbender, where the fucking savior white children are the Inuit tribe. That's whitewashing.
I would bet money the person that wrote that headline was white.
Oh, I guarantee you. We also had.
No, I need you to bet me money so I can win. I need some money.
Need some money. We have Benedict Wong,
yes, we do.
Also one of my favorite humans on the planet.
Perfect
I love
for Bruce.
Perfect, 1000% perfect. He's so good.
All
as Bruce.
this casting is perfect.
It's fantastic. Mackenzie Davis, who plays Mindy Park. Mackenzie Davis, she played the Terminator in.
She wasn't the Terminator. She was the cyborg.
Yeah, she played, but in Dark Fate, right?
Yes.
That was her in Dark Fate. I liked her a lot in that.
She was the Kyle Reese character in Dark Fate.
Yeah. I liked her in that movie a lot. We also have Donald Glover as Rich Purnell. Super great physical comedy when he just fucking falls on his face in his little
his own little coffee spill.
In his own little coffee spill. Yeah, it's great. I love Donald Glover.
You do know I'm your boss,
great.
Right?
That is another thing too, real quickly, that is written and directed really well. They do a lot of physical diagrams of what they're talking about with the space procedures.
Yeah.
He does an actual and I think that's really good to kind of like dumb this down as much as possible, because like the orbital slingshot thing can be like
the slingshot maneuver.
It actually can be a bit like mind-bending if you haven't heard of it before or you're not familiar with it. So I think him actually doing like a representation of it in person was pretty well done.
I was going to bring this up before we signed off, but now's a good time to bring it up. Let me start out by saying I get it. You have to do it. There's no getting around it. But the idea of NASA physicists explaining concepts of physics to other physicists, it's just kind of like, what are you doing? There's even a line in the book when they're like, the man has a doctorate in physics. You don't need to explain physics to him. You know?
But they also follow that up when you're talking about executives, you don't always know for sure, because there are executives at NASA that aren't. They're not science
and like also I said, I'm not faulting the movie for it. It makes total sense. You have to do it because you're not writing for the characters in the movie. You're writing for the audience seeing the movie.
I think it also works though because Annie is there, and Annie is kind of like the stand-in for the audience as far as like what the fuck are you talking about?
No, she was the stand-in for Earth. Get it right, Geoff.
I hate you. No, but yeah, I get what you're saying, but I think they conveyed it pretty well.
Yeah, like I said, there's no getting around it. It has to happen, but
I also
it's just
really
weird to watch, you know.
I agree. I also think it was really smart to give Benedict Wong more to do, because I like the scene where he is stripping all the shit out of the little shuttle.
I like that character too.
Like showing like what they're doing to the ship exactly.
He hasn't even
fucking
gotten to the
terrifying.
nasty stuff yet.
Oh, by all means, get to the nasty stuff.
There's a line in the book that is perfect because it's Mark Watney. I understand not using it in the movie, but he describes what he's doing to the Mav as rape, and that's basically what they do. Like, I understand that's charged verbiage. Like, that's charged language. You can't use that. And I fully 100% stand behind removing it for the movie. But it's a pretty good line in the book. It's pretty accurate to what's happening.
My favorite line that does get put in the movie is they're sending me into space in a convertible. I
good. It's a ragtop.
Always love that line.
Gay pro bringing food. Got it.
Also, I was sad the Aquaman line wasn't able to be put in, because I love the Aquaman line.
Warner Brothers.
Yeah, it's a shame.
That's a good line.
At one point, they have a hard cut to Watney in the book where they're talking about, like, the man's been by himself for 60 days and thinks we all left him to die. Like, what does that do to a man's psyche? And it just hard cuts to Mark.
Like,
and he's
what
like,
could he be thinking right now?
Yeah, and then they just have Mark talking about how the fuck does Aquaman talk to whales? They're mammals, not fish. It makes no fucking sense. And that's like the entirety of the chapter.
What's even more funny when you actually stop and look at it, I believe that is its own separate log entry. Like,
yeah, it's
he
its own
just
separate
thought of that and
log
logged
entry
it for no reason.
Yeah, it was like essentially like a tweet.
Yeah.
Like, they have a tweet.
Yeah, it is right here. Log entry Soul 61. How come Aquaman can control whales? They're mammals. Makes no sense. That's the entire log entry.
That's the entire log entry. It's fucking genius. And I think that's going to be a wrap. Do you have any other kind of closing thoughts on The Martian? We've kind of we apologize again for being all over the place, but it is difficult to do like a book report / movie review, and we're nerding out the entire time because we love pretty much every person involved in this project, both from the writing of the novel and like so many of the actors, the director and writer we both love. It's just something we geeked out pretty hard on, I'd say.
Yeah, I think pretty much anything I had for closing thoughts I've already said, like the whole physicists explaining physics to other physicists, stuff like that. I don't really have any notes on this movie. Like I said, the things that kind of do strike me as weird or bug me or whatever, there's no choice. It's a visual medium. It's adapted from a thing that was not a visual medium. As far as the book, I'm not a skilled enough writer, and I don't read often enough to have notes. So, all I know is it's written well, but also plainly, and presents the math, and I can't put it down when I read it. When I listen
such
to
a
the
fucking page
audiobook,
turner.
I can't. My version is R.C. Bray, who's a goddamn national treasure. And I fucking love that man. And listening to him, I've got several audiobooks that I have a couple of people that sometimes I'll just search Audible for the narrator, for the reader. And R.C. Bray is one of them. He's just so good. I told you, I told you that I think it was Chris Hadfield, actual real life astronaut, once again, asking Andy Weir if he's tried anything from the book. Like, did he try just eating only potatoes or anything? And he said that no, but he had heard that there's a video of R.C. Bray trying to eat a raw potato when he was doing this audiobook. And I want to try to find that video.
That's pretty
I want
fantastic.
to see that. But no, I highly recommend anyone listening to this, go to YouTube, type in Andy Weir, Adam Savage. The interviews are different, but they do also cover a lot of the same ground. But the one with Adam, Andy, and Chris Hadfield, and the one that's just Adam and Andy are both really good interviews. The one with Chris Hadfield is right after a screening of The Martian. and then it's like they do some Q&A with Andy Weir, and it's Andy Weir, Adam Savage, and Chris Hadfield up on stage. Chris Hadfield, for those that don't know, not only is he a real life astronaut, but he watches a lot of movies, reads a lot of books. He talks about them. He's not Neil deGrasse Tyson. He can disconnect. He can say, "Yeah, it's not the way it would be," but also it's a movie, and it's more
fucking movie.
and it's more exciting this way. Like he admits when things are more exciting in the movie. But I don't remember. I think it was Adam that asked him about the characterizations in the movie, and Chris Hadfield says that the movie makes the same sin that all sci-fi movies do of evidently people at Mission Control, their only job is to sit around and cry or sit around and cheer. They don't actually do anything. And he talked about when the probe that explodes halfway to orbit, he said they don't even talk about it till it's too late. He said that room would light up and they'd be all over the place doing everything they can to save that probe. They would have noticed that immediately. It wouldn't have been something that came up when it was too late or anything, and the way that they reacted, like they don't know what to do, is not the way they would have reacted. But he says characterizations for astronauts acting like astronauts is pretty much nailed in the movie, and he said it's pretty much nailed in the book as well. The way that they're thinking through, he said everything that they're doing for their jobs and everything makes sense, and the way that they show that in the movie, and the way that they portray that in the book, it all makes sense from the astronaut side of things. Apparently at one point, I believe it was Chris Hadfield, Andy Weir talks about getting one of the first emails he ever got about the book was from Chris Hadfield, but he got several emails from several astronauts and NASA people.
Oh, cool.
Huh?
Oh, I just said, oh, cool. I hadn't heard about that.
Yeah, when he wrote the book, he got several emails, and one of them was like, it makes for a great plot point in the book, but he doesn't need the oxygenator. All he needs to do to clean the CO2 scrubbers is just heat them up and cook them, and it will boil the CO2 out of them. And he was like, oh, well, I wish I'd known that before I wrote the book. Because that was the whole thing of how does he get the oxygenator in that changes how much power he's using and how much power he needs to drive, and it completely changes the math. But
it also kind of works though, because like Watney is incredibly capable, but he doesn't know everything.
Well, he is an engineer though, so I don't know. But yeah, I thought that was funny. Andy Weir talks about how in the movie, he found it real strange that the wind is blowing that HAB canvas he puts over the exploded airlock in and shaking it around and vibrating it. The wind, the atmosphere on Mars is less than 1% of that of Earth's, and the pressure on Mars is almost non-existent, whereas that HAB canvas is 12 psi. It doesn't matter what the wind does, it would be blowing outwards. It wouldn't be pushed in. But then he's like, but then at the same time, I can't complain because I'm also the guy that the entire story hinged on the storm on Mars being able to blow a 1,400 pound or 1,400 ton spacecraft over on its side. Because if that can't happen, the whole story doesn't happen because he doesn't get left behind.
Right.
So he was like, he's like, I can't fault the movie for doing that when I had to fudge that fundamental mistake in my book for the whole story to ride on.
Yeah.
But yeah, evidently the winds that were in that dust storm that was blowing over the MAV, you could stand in it and not even notice it. Apparently,
that's crazy.
Yeah. So,
but then again, you have to make it dramatic because it is a movie.
Yeah. And
so like everything can always be kind of glossed over as like, yeah, it's not 1-to-1, but like.
But listening to an actual astronaut and the author of the book talk about these things is interesting. Because they're not slamming the movie, they're not slamming the book. They're just having a conversation like you and I are, and it's actually a really good interview. He Andy Weir had to get over his fear of flying to go to NASA. He got all kinds of tours and stuff. There is a CG department in NASA. If you ever watch a NASA launch, once the rocket is out of camera range, they switch to animation and graphics and show what is happening above the Earth just through animation. And some of them are really fucking cool, but they drew up like the whole map of Watney's journey. From where he started at Ares 3 to where he ended at Ares 4, because he gave GPS coordinates in the book. So from context clues and the clues that he was using and the landmarks he was using, they drew out the exact path he drove that matches that distance. And like you see him going in circles to avoid the storm and stuff. The Watney Triangle, they mapped out the Watney Triangle for him. He has this framed on his wall at home. NASA gave it to him. The way the inner politics work in NASA and stuff, like people at NASA were like, so it's okay, you can tell me, who's your source? Because like you know things you shouldn't know. Like who at NASA is your source? Like I gotta know. I gotta ask. And he's like, I don't have a source. I made this shit up. I didn't know it was all true when I made it up. Like, so it's pretty interesting, everything they go into in those interviews.
Yeah, like it's never gonna be able to make it all perfectly up to Neil deGrasse Tyson standards of being accurate,
God.
but I think it's so admirable how much of it is legit.
Yeah, like I said, they're not tearing it apart like Neil deGrasse Tyson would or anything. It's just conversation.
Neil deGrasse Tyson teardowns of movies drives me insane.
I'm
because
glad
like,
the internet finally turned on him on Dune.
Because like, dude, it's a movie.
Yeah.
You have to suspend your fucking disbelief to enjoy any movie. I understand if you can't.
I've always
but you are adding
him, and people are finally realizing he's a dick.
Because he adds nothing of value when he does like a 12-page fucking teardown of the scientific aspects of like a movie where it's like, it doesn't fucking matter.
When he went on a rant about Elsa's eyes being 4 times too large for her face, and he gave all the math.
It drives me insane. I do not like that dude.
Yeah.
But I will quickly just have a little anecdote before we sign off. But one of my memories I have of reading the book originally that just kind of like touches back on your point of like how much of a fucking page turner it is. I was unable to stop reading the book even while I was at work. So I was working the drive-thru at the credit union that I worked at, and was fucking pissed off anytime someone drove up and I had to help them because I had to put down the book. I was actively mad. And that is like the best praise I can give somebody, because usually it fucking takes me forever to get through a book. And when I can't physically put the thing down and I get pissed off at customers because they're interrupting my reading time, that's like the best praise I can give.
I can't tell you how fast I burned through this. There's only 2 books I've ever just burned through without ever putting them down. This is one of them.
What was the other one?
The Transformers prequel. Before I knew any better.
I remember.
I read it in one shift when I was working IMAX booth.
Nice.
It was a 300-page, one of those Penguin books, like 300-page things.
Mm-hmm.
My boss gave it to me out of his cubby before he left work, and before I left work, I was putting it back in his cubby, and I didn't need to take it home.
Nice.
I burned through this probably about as quick.
Yeah, I fucking devoured it the first time I read through it. And yeah, I think it's going to be a wrap for The Martian. So I'll quickly do a sign off of the plugs and everything, and I'll turn it over to Ron to announce the next movie we're covering. So I don't like the sound of that. If you would like to follow the show more, as previously mentioned, we are on Twitter at SPR Filmcast, where you can follow us for show updates. If you caught us on YouTube, obviously doing likes on the uploads and subscribing helps out. Welcome again to all the people that are trickling in.
Smash that bell.
You know, if you want to. I fucking hate the whole smash it. Dude, have you noticed how fucking YouTube, by the way, automatically signs you up for bell notifications now unless you turn them off?
I thought it always did that.
No, you didn't have to use. You used to intentionally switch it to bell notifications. Now you are automatically set up for personalized bell notifications, where you get some bell alerts and you have to turn it off if you want no bell alerts. I just thought that was really fucking shady how everyone automatically does bell alerts now when you fucking hit subscribe. It's like, fuck you, Google. Because I don't like getting notifications when YouTube uploads happen. I just fuck off. I don't need it. I check YouTube way too much as it is. Stop giving me notifications. It's my main source of
entertainment, and I don't know how I feel about that.
Right. Agreed.
Says The two guys about to upload a video to YouTube.
Yeah, like and subscribe. Yeah, you just go to the channel. Yeah.
Oh man.
I will never tell you to smash the bell, but that's my line in the sand.
And the Martian sand.
And obviously sharing this out to your friends.
You know, you mentioned Cargill earlier. Do you know why the dirt on Mars is red?
Oh god, they talked about it in the audiobook. I just heard it.
It's high concentrations of iron oxide, which is another word for rust. The planet is literally rusting, just rusting away. So it is literally a sea of rust.
Yep.
Yeah. You mentioned cargo earlier in the podcast. I was like, oh.
Like all the dots got connected.
Yeah, it all makes sense.
It all makes sense. Ron, where can people find you when you're not on Screenplay Rewind?
You can find me at RonSense TV on all the things, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. I am currently playing Subnautica, which is similar to The Martian. You get stranded on planet 4546b, and you're trying to science your way out of the goddamn planet.
Bring Ron home.
Except Mark Watney didn't have to do it on a randomizer. He didn't need to cram fish together to make a metal air tank.
Fucking noob.
It took me like 5 fish and like some glass or something to make a goddamn metal air tank to go on my bat. It was goddamn ridiculous, man.
And last thing, Ron, what are we covering next time?
My time has come, Geoff. I've been waiting for this moment for 4 years now almost.
I'm terrified.
Finally, my pick is falling on 4th of July. So I am picking Independence Day.
Were you really waiting for an upload to be near 4th of
Goddamn
July?
right I was.
You could have picked the movie any time, dude.
Nope, I watch it every year around Independence Day.
Nice.
So yeah, that's still
so we're
my
covering
normal watching.
So we're covering Regurgence, right?
No, fuck off.
That's the one we're recording.
No, I will leave your ass on Mars if you talk about that movie.
You will intentionally send my ass to another planet.
I will shoot you to Mars. No, the original Independence Day. I know, but it was until the first Avengers movie pretty much my favorite movie, and people have turned on it now. Everybody hates this movie. Everybody loved it when it came out. I don't get it because everything they love about Avengers is in this movie as well. So I don't know. I don't know what happened. It's got action. It's got drama. It's got all the genres mixed together. It is. I said on Twitter that Strange Studies of Strange Stories is currently covering War of the Worlds, the original H.G. Wells story. And I said on Twitter, this may become important soon. That's because Independence Day is a retelling of War of the Worlds. So we're going to talk about that more when we get into it, all the parallels it has. But yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited.
Is it on any streaming platforms?
You know, that is a good question. Let me look it up real quick.
Let's see. Independence
I can't
Day.
type.
It is on Stars.
Well, fuck.
It is also on Fubo.
Well, fuck. Guess I'll have to buy it.
Which my brain always corrects Fubo to Fubar, like
Right.
automatically.
Should have been Fubar. Yeah.
And it's also obviously up for rent on Amazon and Apple.
Well, I think if you have a subscription to Apple TV Plus, you get it too.
Oh, okay.
Based on what I'm seeing here.
I have that. So
I do
I'll
too.
check. All right. So we're covering. I like the wombo combo of The Martian and then Welcome to Earth.
Dude.
That's the follow up.
I watched The Martian, and then I showed my kids this movie, and then I showed them Apollo 13. So that's a really good double feature.
So I watched Apollo 13 like 1,000 years ago. I remember jack shit about that movie. I should actually watch Apollo 13 again.
It's on Apple TV Plus, and it is.
Does it hold
really
up?
Good. It holds up really well.
Okay. Yeah, it has a good cast. I remember. I just don't remember.
Well, I mean, it's based on
details.
an actual thing that happened too. So I mean, it's not like
it's
not like the story's gonna fall apart over time, you know. It's really good, and
Nice.
it holds up really well. And
All right,
the cast in that movie is equally as shocking as the cast in The Martian.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts. And again, thanks everyone for listening to our 3.5 hour nerd out time about The Martian. That's
Go
been
read
fun.
the book. Go get the audiobook if you have to. Whatever you have to do to get through it.
And if you like it, check out Artemis and especially Project Hail Mary, because we will absolutely be having Project Hail Mary on this podcast.
We will be
once
covering
it
Hail
drops.
Mary when it's in theaters.
Yeah, it'll be like a Furiosa. Like we're going first week to get a recording of it because we can't help ourselves. We're gonna watch it immediately.
If enough people will like, share, and subscribe this channel, maybe we can get press passes. You got a year. You got a year to get us press passes.
You got a year. They're never gonna give us passes, man. They they know.
I don't know, man.
We ruined that.
We could be influencers, yo.
No, man. They heard about our live Q&A at Furiosa and how there were like fatalities, and yeah, we're just it's not gonna
that's
happen.
still one of my favorite things we've ever done. What we've ever talked about.
Oh man. Thanks again, everybody, for listening, and we'll catch you next time for Independence. How do we do this again?
I don't have any idea.
I'm about to push the button. It's a red button, so I think it does something.
Push the button, Max.